Welcome to day 2 of Innovate 2022. You're turning into the original free virtual conference for higher ed and marketing and enrollment professionals brought to you by Capture Higher Ed. Good afternoon. I'm Len Napolitano, Capture's CEO and co-host for today's event. And I am thrilled you're here with us for another great afternoon of insightful keynotes and presentations on the issues facing enrollment and marketing professionals today. At Capture, we believe in making every interaction count, and we are grateful that you're interacting with us today. Members of this talented and dedicated community, we know this is a transitional period, and we're grateful that you're taking some time this afternoon to spend it with our community, these keynote sessions, and these presentations. Like I said, at Capture, we believe in making every interaction count, and every day, our people, our platform, and our solutions help institutions identify, convert, and enroll more of the right students. Our institutions are making personalized, relevant, and data-driven connections with prospective students and parents. We get it. Higher ed recruitment and marketing roles are turning into a high-stress, high-demand, high-wired acts. This afternoon, we want to help you find your professional balance through some excellent keynote presentations and sessions that address the issues and innovations affecting our industry. If you joined us yesterday, you heard our opening keynote speaker, Inside Higher Ed's editor, Scott Jasic, talk about what he thought were the 10 biggest issues facing admissions. You also heard the results of a year-long research project conducted by Angie Johnson, Vice President of Enrollment Management at Friends University, and into the ever-changing landscape of education technologies that are available to enrollment management professionals and why we would use them. In addition, Ben Matthew Corpus, Vice Provost of Enrollment and Financial Aid at Florida Polytech, showed us how to achieve much-needed personalization in student outreach. And finally, Laura Rudolph, Director of Enrollment Communications at Transylvania University, talked to us about her team's simple and highly effective strategy for reaching out to parents and prospective students. If you missed any of these sessions, all of them will be available in recordings from Innovate after Innovate. That's right. So sign up for the email and we'll send out these recordings from yesterday and also today. In just a few minutes, I will be joined by Carroll University's president, Dr. Cindy Nattinger. And today's opening keynote, a presidential view, finding the institution's balance. During this QA session, Dr. Nattinger will share what she learned while dealing with such profound experiences, such as leading a closed institution, transforming an institution during a pandemic, and battling cancer. What she's come up with is a decision-making process that can benefit any leader at any level. After Dr. Nattinger, we will have an EdTech hootenanny planned for the 2 p.m. panel session, Measure the Impact of Your Enrollment Marketing Tech Stack, led by Capture's Chief Product Officer, Rajiv Arora. Well, he'll moderate a panel of experts from some of the leading enrollment management companies to include Platform Q, Unibuddy, Campus ESP, Concept 3D, and Campus Wheels. How does your tech stack up? We'll find out. Hopefully it's better than a Big Mac. And in our 2:45 session, we'll learn about the convergence of behavioral and emotional intelligence. During the college recruitment process, Joel Bauman, Senior Vice President of Enrollment Management from Duquesne University, and Bob Longmire, President of Longmire & Company, will show us that at Duquesne, using both emotional and behavioral intelligence and how it develops and creates an affinity for your institution. And then we top off our virtual conference with a session I know many of you have been waiting for, my interview with award-winning journalist and New York Times bestseller, Jeff Selingo. That's right, Jeff is the author, from many of us know, books such as College Unbound, There Is Life After College, and his latest book, Who Gets In and Why. He was allowed to embed himself in admissions offices across the country for 8 months to study the topic of enrollment management and getting really that inside look into what we're doing every day to impact the lives of other individuals. This closing session from Jeff will be one you don't want to miss. And he'll talk about what he uncovered while researching this topic and some insights into the industry on where we are today and where we could be going, and some best practices that he knows that he thinks could be applicable to any of us. That's right. That will be our closing session for today. And lastly, we'll be joined by our MCs, Carlo Terwilliger and Heather, after this session. Before I kick off the first session with Dr. Cindy Nanager, just want to remind everyone, there's going to be 2 ways to send comments. Please feel free to send comments on any platform that you're using. There's a comment section. Once you send those comments, we'll be sharing it with the speakers. So again, feel free to share your comments in the comment section of the platform that you're using. We are streaming live today from 5 platforms. Well, I'd be delighted to now welcome Dr. Cindy Nanager. Dr. Nanager became Carroll University's 15th president on July 1st, 2017. Before coming to Wisconsin, where Carroll University is, just outside Milwaukee, she was president of St. Catherine's College in Kentucky and was vice president of academic affairs at William Peace College in Raleigh. She spent much of her career in a variety of leadership roles at Bellarmine University, right here in Capture's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. Dr. Nanager is a current and past member of numerous professional organizations, including the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities and the Council of Independent Colleges. She was one of Milwaukee's Business Journal's 2020 Women of Influence and was a 2013 Fulbright winner, participating in the International Education Administrators Program in France. Dr. Nanager is a native of Bullitt County, Kentucky, just outside Louisville. She is a 1989 graduate of Western Kentucky University and earned her master's and doctorate degrees in education from the University of Louisville. This afternoon, I get the pleasure of talking to her about balance, from implementing institutional initiatives to making enrollment marketing changes to reimagine one's day-to-day routine. Striking that institutional balance is a challenge for any institutional leader. It is my pleasure to welcome President Cindy Nanager. Good afternoon, President Nanager.
Hi there. It's so good to be with you today.
It is so good to be with you. From all of us at Capture and the slightly under 1,000 participants joining us today from 5 streaming platforms, I not only want to welcome you, but before we begin, I wanted to see if you can just spend some time telling us about Carroll University.
Oh, I would love to tell you about Carroll University. I am honored. Thanks for recommending and giving me a chance to talk a little bit about our historic institution. I'm so honored to be the 15th president of Carroll and the first woman to serve in that role. Carroll is Wisconsin's first and oldest institution of higher learning. And you can see on the screen our beautiful campus. We have 4 historic buildings on this campus, and it is even more beautiful in person than you see here on the screen. We started as the pioneering institution. That's why we call ourselves the pioneers, because we pioneered higher ed for the state of Wisconsin. We were actually founded 2 years before Wisconsin was even a state in 1846. And so this year we just wrapped up a whole series of celebrations for Carroll for our 175th anniversary. We had humble beginnings. We were founded with 5 students and 2 faculty members. And today, of course, we are a very robust small university, mid-sized university with over 3,400 students. And it's just an amazing place. We've grown to have 23 Division III athletic teams. We have over 23, or as you can see on the screen, 24,000 living alumni who are from coast to coast and around the world, and doing pioneering work, I like to say. And so we are very proud of all of the things that Carroll has accomplished through its 175 years.
Thank you.
See too here, we've got, from our humble beginnings as a liberal arts institution, today we offer, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. We have a doctorate in physical therapy. And as part of our need to continue to remain relevant and to answer the need in society, we decided to back engineer a nursing program. We can't do enough for nursing right now. It's a pillar program for us. And so we decided to do an associate degree program based in one of our local community centers that we partner with. And so students can come and get an associate degree in nursing, get a job, and then finish up that bachelor's degree with us online. So it's a new way to think about getting your BSN degree. So you can see we've got that one associate degree. It's fairly new. And we think a new model for how to prepare nurses and get more even bilingual nurses because that's our focus in that program. So doing lots of pioneering work still after 175 years.
Thank you for sharing. And that's actually something we're going to bring up a little bit later in the conversation about being a pioneer, even, during a pandemic and being innovative. But I want the audience to get a little sense of who you are and your background. I've had the opportunity to speak with you on a number of occasions. And one of the things, uncovering is that your path wasn't originally in higher education. It wasn't even in, even thoughts of going to post-secondary education. And so do you feel comfortable sharing with us, your education roots was actually in primary education, and then how did it transform into post-secondary?
Yes. No, my love is education. Absolutely. You're right. I when I was an undergraduate degree seeking student, I studied elementary education at Western Kentucky and loved every minute of it. And it wasn't until much, much later that I found my calling in higher ed. I was finishing my master's degree at the University of Louisville, and my faculty member asked me to stay after class and asked if I would join the research program and do some research. They had just received a federally funded $500,000 grant and wanted to know if I would be interested in joining their team as a research assistant. And so I was honored and thought I would be happy to do that. And that's sort of how I fell into higher education. And then, I went on from there and finished my master's degree, started into a doctoral program. And I did all of that while I was just taking a break from elementary teaching while I was a stay-home mom. I have 3 children and they're all adults now. But at the time, it gave me the opportunity to have some flexible schedules. And so I was doing my graduate degree program while I was still, at home with my kids when they were young. And so I took that first full-time position in higher ed as a faculty member and found really my love. I was still teaching, but working with pre-service teachers and in-service teachers at the graduate level and just loved it. But I quickly found a path with my faculty members and my dean, who asked me if I was interested in being the department chair for the graduate programs. And so I said, sure. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but if that was what the need was, I said yes. And then I found quickly that I was asked to be the dean of the School of Education, several years later. And then I got a call one day from our provost who asked me to come and talk with her and meet with her. And they were starting getting ready to develop a new position, an assistant vice president. This position did not exist, and she needed some assistance as we were growing the services we were offering to our campus in the provost office in academic affairs, with faculty development, with grant writing and those kinds of things. And she wanted me to come over and work with her as her assistant vice president. And so I did. And we had a wonderful time together. She was a great mentor for me. And I remember during one of our one-on-one meetings, we were laughing, we were talking, I don't even know about what, but whatever I said to her, she laughed and said, you're going to make a great president one day. And that's, it hit me. I was very stunned. And I had never thought about the presidency. It was in that conversation that she planted a seed for me and then really supported my professional growth toward exploring a presidency. And so, so that's where it came from. It was well into my career after I had many opportunities. And, I have a lot of opportunities to make speeches and to talk with women at various stages. And I often say 2 things. One, when a door opens for you, walk through it. Because you don't know where that door is going to lead you. It's certainly, I walked through many doors. I had many opportunities afforded to me, and I always took those opportunities. And it led me from an elementary position to being president of a wonderful institution. So that's one lesson that I've learned. And then I also tell other women that it's our responsibility to mentor others. I had a wonderful mentor, and she really did plant seeds for me. She saw things in me that I didn't know, and I didn't see in myself at the time. And so I think it's our responsibility to mentor the next generation. And so I try to do that myself, and I encourage others to do the same.
If there was something that you took away from being an elementary school teacher that today you see in practice, would your employees today say it's patience? Would you say that you're a patient person? Or would you say it's actually the ability to convey a message, one message to a lot of different people so they can all understand? What would you take away from that experience that you're applying today?
Okay, if anyone is watching that knows me, they're going to say it is definitely not patience.
I don't think it
I am a
is
very
patience,
patient person. Yeah, so that's pretty funny. No, it is not patience. I am very impatient, and I have to slow myself down and recognize that we all move at different paces, and I have to remember that. But I do think it is about having a message and getting everyone to be with you on that message and on that journey. And so, when you're teaching 28 fourth graders, for example, they're all at different places in their learning. And that's kind of like my campus. We're working on a strategic plan, and they're all at different places in their comfort level about where we're going. And so, being able to deliver that message and being able to get people to get excited about that plan and move them along, I think that's what I bring from my elementary days the most.
You're having me jump to an area I was going to wait a little bit longer, but I feel like it's pertinent. The president really has a significant amount of influence on the message of an institution, what messages, what themes we're going to keep, what themes we might have to shelve, for now. And so can you share with us the message that you thought was maybe important pre-pandemic, and now your message today, where you feel like your critical message is, or maybe that's one the same message, what is, if you say, this is the message when I took over, I really felt we need to invest in. Can you kind of understand why you thought that should be the message and maybe some of the ways you're measuring it? Because for a lot of marketing leaders who are on today's call, they're always working with their president on that message, and then the enrollment leaders execute it. Would love to get your thoughts around this, especially from sitting at Carroll.
It's a great question. And I think it's one that we're all still trying to figure out, as we move out of the pandemic and what this post-pandemic world will look like for everyone. I think, for us at Carroll and for many institutions, I think a lot of us, really highlight the community that our students will come and join and what it would be like. And I think the pandemic really upended that for us. All of our communities have unique features about them, and we try to highlight those when we're doing our visits, campus visits, and let our potential students and family members know, like, if you join our community, this is what it will be like. And this is what makes us unique in our community. And so with the pandemic, our communities really did, we halted it. We kind of went inward, and everyone sort of paused. And I think it's trying to find our way back to our community. And the fact that we all went home, we all worked from home, we stayed sort of, to ourselves, away from the community, was difficult for all of us who believe so strongly in that community. And that's what we're selling at all of our institutions. And so I think that has been one of the messages that we are trying to, again, pull back together and talk a lot about. I think for our campus community, and I can talk a little bit later about this too, the pandemic has really challenged us as we try to come back. And again, we're no different than other industries in that some of our employees felt like, I really like this remote flexible learning. I really like being able to, do my work from home? I really like to, stay home several days a week. And can I still do that? I can get my work done. And then those of us in enrollment, and I count myself leading, that enrollment team, working with them. We're trying to sell a vibrant community when our parents and our students come to campus. So I don't want our doors closed because they're working remotely. I want when they walk around campus to see this wonderful, vibrant community at Carroll University. So that's been a challenge. I mean, certainly you can do your work from home, but what we're showing these parents and these students that are coming for visits is we are a place of community. So I think that's been one of our biggest challenges is certainly you could do your work from home, but it's easier for us to share with our potential students and their families what we are when we're together.
I think that's interesting. You just mentioned about the balance from working from home, because as you think about your career, right? The importance of having the opportunity, right? And yet the need to bring it, finding the balance because the need to bring the community back and the importance. You had said something to me in an earlier conversation I thought you were going to bring up, so I am going to bring it up now. You mentioned to me something about emphasizing when you came on board that we were the pioneers and really thinking about that as a critical message and reinforcing it. And so maybe you had like some of those aha moments about, hey, why we have to do this. Can you kind of go a little bit more into that thought making process that you went to say, hey, we're going to move in this direction, team. And, also maybe give the team, or if you could share with us, did the team come with you, or were there some things that you did as a leader to get the team to move with you? Because a lot of schools are, reinventing their message.
No, you're absolutely right. We've talked about this too, so we're the pioneers. And I mentioned at the very beginning that, we call ourselves the pioneers because we're the first. We're the first institution of higher ed in Wisconsin. We pioneered higher education for the state of Wisconsin. And so we're really proud of that. But we also, know that the term pioneer and thinking about pioneers has a negative connotation for many people, especially when we think about how our indigenous peoples were treated in the days of the European influence on this country as they came through. And so we're sensitive to that as well. We, our campus especially, we have effigy mounds on our campus. It was home to indigenous peoples well before we were there. And so we try to pay homage to that, but also recognizing the pioneering work that happened as Carroll came to be the first institution. So do we keep the name pioneers? Do we not? Do we embrace it? And so we've chosen to embrace it, and we use it really as an action word. And certainly we are the pioneers, but we more as our message and what we try to share with people is talk about, if you go to our website, our landing page, the first thing it says is, how will you pioneer? And so we talk about your pioneering adventure. We say to our students, after 4 years here, you'll start your own pioneering work. And then we talk about the alumni who, and I mean, I could go on, I could spend the entire day talking about the people who have, come through our doors in the 175 years, who have gone on to do incredible pioneering work in medicine, in the food industry, in the arts and entertainment industry. So, I mean, just all sorts of things that they've been pioneers and in their own field of study. So that's how we've decided to embrace and keep the brand of the pioneers. And I think people are good with that. We love that we're the first. We love the history of our place. And so we've chosen to embrace that and then challenge all of the students who come to us to pioneer their own journey and to create that pioneering path for themselves.
You share about that pioneering spirit from, when we spoke about the student and the curriculum that they're a part of and, the path that they can take while as a current student. When you say the word the pioneering, how do you put that into practice or get your prospective students excited? Is there anything unique that you can share?
We tell our story. I mean, it's so fun to say, what will you do? Will you be like Donald Gerke? He was a food inventor and he invented SpaghettiOs. And so he's
going to say SpaghettiOs was part of my food pyramid.
How about that? So everybody knows SpaghettiOs. And actually, we also say, and that orange color wasn't just by accident, because our colors are orange and white. And so, we kind of laugh about that. Like, so he carried that Carol spirit with him into his work, and take a look at SpaghettiOs. Or, Dan Von Hoff, and you can Google him. He is one of the world's leading authorities on pancreas cancer. He has pioneered therapies that have changed the world and saved countless lives. And he's a Carroll pioneer, and he contributes his success back to his days at Carroll. And so whether it's pancreas cancer or another cancer, myself included, I'm a cancer survivor. I am grateful to people like him, and he got his inspiration, from Carroll. Fred McMurray, my three sons, he's a Carroll pioneer, and he was the first person to be named a Disney legend. He's had all those Disney movies and television fame from the 40s, 50s, 60s. And so, he did pretty well for himself as well. Or, there's even Rob Lampier. He created the software that went up on the Hubble Space Telescope for the camera. So all of these images we have from space, from the Hubble Space Telescope, thanks to a Carroll pioneer. So, so we just, listen, I could do this all day long. It's amazing. But, so there's something about this amazing historic, campus that will inspire you to create your own pioneering journey.
You brought something up, your battle with cancer.
Yes.
And you've had two very unique experiences, not only the battle with cancer, but you're one of few presidents that's had to close a college down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My question is a two-part, in that you feel comfortable maybe sharing briefly about those experiences, but then how have you applied those experiences during the pandemic? Because then I want to spend some time on working with teams, managing teams in a pandemic, and helping them find the balance. Like, hey, you have to let things go. Not everything can be important. And what are some of your practices that may be derived from those two unique experiences? So whichever one you want to start with first, but I think it would really give some insight to then that decision-making process you've employed.
No, I don't mind talking about that at all. I consider those, defining moments in my life, professionally and personally. And again, I have, drawn from those experiences, and they've taught me life lessons that certainly I have used, and I tackle other challenges and crises that come my way in similar ways. You mentioned St. Catherine College, this wonderful, beautiful, small place in central Kentucky. When I arrived there, I was hired to be the vice president for academic affairs. And there were some challenges with a couple of the academic programs. I have a strong background in accreditation, so I studied everything about this institution and the academics, and knew I could make a difference and help, what was needed there. So I was excited to take on this position. It was a lateral move for me. I was a VP of academic affairs at one place and made a lateral move to come to St. Catherine. And shortly after I arrived, but I won't go into all of the details, I learned that we had some real serious problems in the financial aid and compliance area. That was not under my purview as VPAA. But it really did impact all of us. And so the president, who had been a longstanding president, decided that he would retire at this point. And the board came to me, long story short, and asked if I would be willing to step in and lead the college through this really, really tumultuous time. And they wanted, for me to figure out, one of three things: either see if this could be a viable institution, explore a merger, or if we had to close our doors, work through that process. And honestly, it was the most stressful 18 months of my professional life. It was a complicated situation. And again, I won't go into all the details today, but basically some things were out of our control and some things were not. So it was important to me as the leader now to distinguish between those two things. And I worked on the things that we could control. And that's an important piece of what I've learned in these defining moments in my life. And so I also am a person that looks at extremes. So I always kept in mind, what will success look like if I go this path, and what does failure look like? Worst case scenario, best case scenario. So I always kind of kept that in mind as well. And so I made a plan. and I worked the plan. And so when I started with viability, let's work on how to make this the most viable campus. So I put together, a plan A, and I always have a backup plan, Nappy, always. Plan A, plan B, plan C. I got to tell you, on this campus, I got all the way to plan Z. I mean, I tried every scenario for viability, and I realized that was not going to happen, unfortunately. So then I turned my attention to merger acquisition. And I worked all aspects of a plan. I created my plan and some backup plans, and I explored all opportunities for any kind of merger acquisition. But in the end, for, again, a variety of reasons, it became clear that was not going to be an option. And that closure really was the only option that we had after these 18 months. And so I began working. I have to develop a plan, how to close an institution, which not a lot of people have experience with. And so made our plan and worked our plan all the way through that process. And it's painful. If anyone has ever had to close a campus, it is a painful process for our students, our faculty, our staff, the community. And it's very similar to a death. And you go through the stages of grief and loss in that process. But because I planned it so thoroughly, I was feeling at peace in the end that we left no stone unturned, and it was the right way and the only answer that we could do. So after that, I have had other times in my leadership where crisis management was needed. Obviously, the pandemic being an obvious one, and again, following the same plan of action. Identify what I can and cannot control, make a plan, and work the plan. And always have a backup.
I must ask, was there something that you told to your team and you said, you know what, we're not going to worry about that during the pandemic? And they were shocked that you said that. Like, what do you mean? And when you're like, you know what, we're going to focus on this. And can you give it what that was and why you took that position? Because I'm sure there's someone else out there that's wondering, I can't let this go. And we're not talking about letting it go like Elsa and Frozen. But, when everyone is just so stressed, they're trying to do everything. Is there an example?
That's a good question. Let me think about whether there were times where I said, no, we're not going to focus on that. I'm trying to figure out this, these are the areas that we need to focus on. But we always, again, because I live in that world of extremes as well, we had to say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing and scenario that could happen on as we do our, what I called scenario planning. We did. I feel like I've become a master at scenario planning on what's the worst that could happen and the best that could happen. So I'll think on that. If it comes to me, I'll certainly share that. But I have to say, it was during that first year at Carroll, 4.5 years ago, that I had my cancer diagnosis. And I couldn't believe it when the doctor told me I had cancer, because the only thing I could think of was, I do not have time for this right now. Just started a new job. We've got a strategic plan that we're finalizing. And then, I paused and then I began to do what I always do. And that's, create my plan and work my plan. And I had to recognize what was in my control and what wasn't in my control. And with cancer, it's the same thing. I mean, not everything's in my control, but there were things that were, some things that were in my control. So I made my plan to manage through the aspects that I had control over. And so I tackled that just like I tackled the issues at St. Catherine, the pandemic, and everything else. So those are the life lessons that have taught me that to identify what I have control over, what I don't, work on what I do, create my plan, and work the plan. That's been 4.5 years ago. So far, so good on the cancer. So
I want to, not like congratulations, but I want to say, how do you parlay that and convey that kind of decision-making process? I want to spend some time to your enrollment team. Is there a series of metrics now, or just things that you focus on that maybe were not as important when you first came in because of your plan? And if so, do you feel comfortable being specific, saying, now for our enrollment team, we really focus on this, or we're putting a little bit more emphasis on that because of the way we're planning? Can you give us any insight to what has changed, whether when you first started to where you are today?
Certainly, I think a lot of people can relate to this. Mm-hmm. I think when I first arrived, we were experiencing some nice areas of growth, in the undergraduate area. Mm-hmm. We had some new programs and growth was a part of our I would say our annual process. And then I think for now we are satisfied not to grow. And that's part of our plan. I mean, I came in, I just wrapped up year 5, and I had a different vice president at the time. But, the very first thing, my first conversation I had was, okay, we know the demographics. We know where we're headed. This is not, what's our plan? And so we talked about what is the plan. So again, I'm a planner. And so you don't wait until it's all upon you to say, now what are we going to do? You have to make your plan and start working that plan. So when it's here, that demographic cliff, if you will, we're ready for it. And so that's what we started planning 5 years ago for that. And I'm happy to share, some of the things that we did. We were an institution, my apologies, at Carroll, that were solely focused on the undergraduate population that primarily came from our state and Northern Illinois. And so I knew that was an area that we really had to change. We couldn't, because I knew what the demographics were there. So if that's all we're going to focus on, that's going to be a problem for us as we move forward. So we knew we had to create new markets for us in the 5 years. And so we worked on that for undergraduate, and we were very strategic about that. I think the new markets that we were looking at might not work for others around the country, wherever they are. So people have to look at what would work for you. We also had some markets some years back that were really positive and productive for us that we had let go. So we've got a lot of alums in those areas, and we wanted to renew and reconnect in those markets. So we put together a plan, and we've been working that plan. And then we also knew, because we have graduate programs and we've been very successful in those graduate programs, that staying steady at the undergraduate level with these new markets, and then increasing graduate programming in areas that are high need areas in our region would be the way that we would, manage our way through these tumultuous times in enrollment.
You brought up something interesting. You said alumni connection and leveraging alumni during the enrollment process. Was that new for Carroll, or was that something that was happening, but you expanded it? Do you mind elaborating a little bit further? Because this is something Scott Jasek talked about yesterday about what was going on at State University of New York at Oswego.
Completely new concept for Carroll. It's not something we have done in the past. And we have alums who really want to, reach out and support and help. And we need to take advantage of that. I mean, so, they're our best recruiters at times. We've got a wonderful enrollment team. But, when you've got people who are there all the time in these new markets, so we've been able to tap into those. And one of the areas we were talking about too was down in Puerto Rico. And we've got a lot of alumni in Puerto Rico who came to Carroll. Some stayed in our area, some went back to Puerto Rico. And so when we went back down to sort of renew some of those contacts, it was our alums who took us back to the schools, the high schools in the area to really help, reinstill and connect us with the people we needed to be connected with. So it was wonderful. And we tied that into a wonderful alumni event. And so it's just great.
So you not only created, you said, okay, we have to reimagine the territories we're looking at. We're going to engage with our alumni. You thought about some new markets, right? Or not new markets, but new curriculum or new programs to think about. How have you thought about, the culture, thinking about the culture of your team? So both knowing the culture of the community and the culture of your team. So both the enrollment team and the marketing, what is that culture? What do you do to create it or instill it? But then how are you creating that culture at Carroll? And what are some of those things that you're doing as the leader?
Yeah, so I think, coming out of the pandemic, it's been difficult for us, just like it has been for a lot of people. And so, I noticed, one of the things, is this the time you want to talk about our reset?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
Listen, I think that kind of leads me right into that, because that's part of the culture. So it's always been such a wonderful, very positive, and just a tremendous place to work. And it still is. But I've noticed, and I really noticed this this past November. I was at one of my senior team meetings, so vice presidents and me around the table, and I looked around at my team. They're phenomenal, and they looked so tired. And I just thought to myself, you all look like I feel. So I look probably just like them. But I remember thinking, okay, it's time to sort of back up and figure out how we can, change this, because when you're in it, it's almost like being on a roller coaster. I mean, it's just you're going and going.
Yes.
We didn't take anything off anyone's plate, but we have to do it this way. We added contact tracing, we added testing, we added all of these extra things, and then
you're speaking the audience language. Yes,
it's been overwhelming for all of us, for everyone. And so we sort of hit the wall, I guess. I mean, they were still going, but it was almost just going through the motions, because it hit me. I probably had been going on much longer, but I just paused long enough myself to look at my team, and I just saw the exhaustion in them. And so then I knew we've got to reset. So I decided to at the end of the semester, a few weeks later, we met, and I said, all right, we're going to bring our goals back. I want us to all look at our goals midway through the year, and I want you to tell me what you want to take off your plate. Let's shift our goals.
You do this for every division leader, or for
every vice president, who oversees a division. So we had to reset as well. So it starts with the senior team. And it was just being able to have that conversation. I could see sort of the relief. I can't say that my team took a lot of things off their plate, but knowing that they could was like just so relieving to them. And so we talked about, as we go into the spring semester, we come back after the holidays in January, you need to take off what you need. You've got permission. So let's talk about it. Take off your plate what you need to take off. And the understanding that they could do that was so welcoming. And then I told them, you need to do this with your team. You need to talk with your teams about what can you let go? What can you take off? Because they're as exhausted as you are, as we are.
Right.
And so the conversation, was beginning, and we had just received some feedback at the end of the semester from our campus community about how they were feeling. And it's no different than how the nation's feeling, how we're all feeling, tired and worn out. And it's the pandemic fatigue. Then we were seeing the beginnings of the Great Resignation. Right. And so the Great Resignation did two things, I think, for my campus. One, it dumped more work on everyone who was already tired, because they had to cover for their colleague who just left until we could fill that position. And then it also made them upset that, like, their good friends were gone. So they were losing their good colleagues and peers. And so they wanted me to do something about that. They wanted me to fix that. They wanted me to stop that. And it wasn't enough for me to say, Google it, everybody. The Great Resignation. It's a real thing. It's happening everywhere, not just Carol. That didn't matter. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted me to fix it. So we decided to seek the help of a consultant, bring someone in from the outside, and work with every team and talk about what they could do to empower themselves to fix what they were feeling. Set some goals for themselves, short-term and long-term goals, and to make your environment better. And this is what we did all spring. This is how we reset this spring. Yep. And it started with us, senior team. We had to model. We're gonna do the first part. What can we do for ourselves? And we got going. And then it went all semester long. And we just had our last sessions in May. So it took all semester. And, at first it was, we want the administration to, and the consultant said, no, not what the administration can do. What can you do? And so what it ended up doing was putting the focus back on our employees, and then empowering them to take control of their joy, of their work. And by the end of the semester, the difference in the culture, because that's what originally you asked about in this question, was significantly different. It was, by February, things were so dreary and sad for my campus. And by the end of the semester, I don't want to pretend that everything's perfect, but I can tell you a significant change had begun on our campus, and people did feel more empowered, and they did feel better, and they knew that the administration recognized that things are hard, and that we were listening. And so we are very excited to enter into a new academic year next year. People have plans. They've created the plans. They're their goals, their work, and we know what those are, and we support them.
Do you mind if you're able to share an example or two of something where you saw that transformation, where someone thought it was someone else's responsibility, and then by the end said, wow, this is really up to me and I am empowered to make this now my responsibility. Can you give an example when you just saw, wow, this did work, right?
Yeah, I think let me share this. We have a Center for Graduate Studies, and it is about 2 miles from campus. So a lot of our grad faculty and our grad programs, that's where they're housed, about 2 miles from campus. And in fairness, they really feel detached from our campus. That's fair. And they did a good job of reminding us of that through their conversation. So what they wanted was a constant, we want the administration to, we want the administration to, we want the administration to. But instead, they turned it around and said, we want to be the center for people remembering that we're here. So why don't we? And so they decided that let's invite our provost and the dean, because the deans, there are 4 deans of 4 schools that we have, and their programs are all housed here. And so they invited the deans to have their weekly dean meetings out there for a month. And so, which was what, so they put it back on that. So they could be reminded that we're here and we're not forgotten about. And so that was their idea. The dean said, what a great idea. We'll come out there and we'll have our meetings there. We'll visit around. And so they were empowered to, rather than saying, woe is me, no one knows we're here, no, everyone has forgotten about us. They said, let's invite the deans to have their meetings out here and so forth. So again, President's on her way out there when she is back on campus in 2 weeks. And so I'll have a meeting out there. So anyway, it was a wonderful idea. There were many more like that, but you get the idea.
I want to go back to a question I forgot to ask. How do you see the enrollment landscape changing? And what advice would you give to some enrollment leaders? And that's the landscape changing, whether it's demographic, whether it's what parents are expecting. You're unique as being a comprehensive university. You are teaching not only that high school to college transition, adult learners. You have you have probably a stronger fluency maybe than other individuals in your role. But if there's any insight you can share with us on how you see the landscape changing.
Yeah, well, first I will say this. We had a lot of conversations that people were talking about when when the whole nation went remote for that spring, when the pandemic first hit us in March of 2020, and there were lots of conversations that it'll never be the same. Higher ed will be remote forever, and that kind of thing. I can tell you that that's not true. I mean, our students wanted that experience back on our campuses more than ever, and longed for it, needed it. And so I think the traditional higher ed institution is not going away. But I do believe, and I have felt this for quite some time, that it is changing. We are morphing, and we're seeing it right before our very eyes right now in this era. So I think we have to be flexible, and we know how to do that. Our faculty know how to do it. Our staff know how to do it. We know how to be flexible. And I think that's what our students and our parents want the most, is flexibility from us. Now, what does that mean? That's up for each of us to decide, and how flexible we want to be. I can tell you 5 years ago when I arrived at Carroll, we did not have a single fully online program, but we do today. And I think now that doesn't mean it's replacing, online's going to replace what we do in our face-to-face instruction. But I do think if we want to be responsive, this is not a new concept. We have to figure out a way and what that means. And so for those who are still kind of holding out on that, I would encourage us to think, how can we be more flexible for the people that we're serving? I do believe that our students, they don't want to sit in their parents' basement and take school that way. But I do think there are some students who want a more flexible model, whether it's while they're working and going to school, whatever that might be. We do have to be thinking about that, and the adult learner too. There are a lot of adult learners. And then the other thing I will say is there is truly a need for the credential based education. And that's different than what those of us in traditional four-year education schools, think about. So if people are out there and you haven't jumped into certifications or credentials. That's something I would say it's probably time. And you don't do that on your own. You do that in partnership with your communities. So we've got a variety of credentials that we have established. Everything from, policing and public safety with some of our community members. One of the first ones we did was contact tracing. And we did the training for contact tracing for our county when the pandemic hit. And then it's just, from dyslexia credential that we offer to our school districts, to you name it. So a lot of things in that credential world is very different for us in how we think about it. Certainly our School of Education has done that for many years, but now we're looking at it more broadly for other areas in our university to think about credentials as well.
President Naninger, I just have to say, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Your insight over the past 40 minutes has been amazing. And so before we go, I actually want to leave you with something that you said so I can share with the entire team. It's how you respond to those challenges and barriers that will really define how your life goes, says Naninger. I often say, trust your instincts and listen to yourself. There will be barriers always in your way, but don't make excuses. I had found this quote of something you said. And so I not only want to say thank you for sharing it when you did, but it's relevant today. And to everyone out there, I hope I take that quote and relate it to some of the other things that President Naninger shared with us about thinking about what you can control and what you can't, the best case and worst case, the having the plan. And for those enrollment and marketing professionals, when you think about being creative, thinking about outside of your market, also thinking about your alumni engagement. This is the second expert we heard talk about it, and really involving your alumni connections and realizing it's not only just about enrollment and marketing. And to the executive team, it's okay to reset again, but with a plan. President Naninger, on behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing your day with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great to be here, and I wish you all the best as you continue on with the conference. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, President Naninger. You have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you all find it as insightful as we did here at Capture. President Naninger, I just think, is just a remarkable individual and someone you probably can talk to for hours. And with that, as we continue on with day 2 of Innovate, it's time now to introduce your MCs, Heather Mueller and Carla Twilliger. Heather Mueller has been a key member of the Capture Higher Ed team since the company's inception. She has extensive experience in higher education, particularly in enrollment management and student services. Before coming to Capture, she worked at Lincoln College in Illinois, Thomas University in Georgia, Rutgers University, and Illinois State University. Heather's experience, knowledge, and expertise allow her to help Capture clients implement successful recruitment and marketing strategies through our industry-leading behavioral intelligence platform. She has spearheaded an array of search and enrollment strategies using the company's constantly rapidly evolving technologies, including the marketing automation and the predictive models built for higher education. Co-hosting with Heather is Carla Twilliger. Carla started her career in marketing and advertising, working in Louisville and LA for such companies as Fitness Magazine, Deutsch LA, and the Barbie account at Mattel. In 2012, she pivoted her career to focus on organizational development so she could change the game as it pertains to company culture, talent management, and transforming the overall employee experience. 10 years later, Carla is recognized as a trailblazer within the people operations space, taking a unique approach to driving meaning and lasting change within companies, encouraging and helping people to grow and find their purpose, cultivating a psychologically safe space, and helping organizations thrive by leading with the mindset that culture trumps everything. She joined the team at Capture in August of 2021, and we are grateful for the impact of her efforts. Carla graduated from the University of Kentucky with a Bachelor of Arts in Integrated Strategic Communications. It is my pleasure to welcome them both.
Thanks, Nappy.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, what an excellent way to start day 2. Dr. Naninger was unbelievable.
She was speaking my language as the first female president. And, Heather and I are the two females on the executive team at Capture. And as somebody who's such an advocate for human rights and women's rights in general, like everything she said is incredible. I loved how she said, be a mentor for other women. I say that all the time. We should be building one another up and supporting one another. And also, I'm just curious. I think we both want to be your best friends. So I'm sure she has a lot of friends, but if she has any room, we're in.
I'm definitely going to be connecting with Dr. Nattinger on LinkedIn because I am obsessed.
There were just so many things that she said that aren't just applicable to universities and institutions, to every company, to every culture. I loved, being part of it, right? For the people, by the people. And there's just so many things. I could go on and on.
I know. The one thing, because there are so many, but right in the beginning, one of her statements was, when a door opens for you, walk through it. And I feel like as all of us go through our careers, there are many of those opportunities, and we just have to be brave enough to do it. And wild things can happen after that you would never plan for, right? But are beautiful in your life. So we could go on forever, but we have actually an amazing lineup of sessions ready to go today. Once again, I'm Heather Mueller, Capture's National Vice President for Enrollment Solutions, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Carla Toledo,
Senior Director of People Operations at Capture.
It's our job to guide you through this virtual journey that we call Innovate 2022. Thank you again for all who have joined today, who have continued from yesterday, to spend some time with us and our amazing lineup of presenters and sessions. We have good stuff on the way, but before we get to that, Carla, I know we have some housekeeping items that we need to get through. First and foremost, if you need to ask questions during any of the sessions, we encourage you to do so. Just drop them in the live chat or the comment sections of the channel that you're streaming from. And the very exciting part that is happening today, beyond amazing content,
so exciting, right?
Is our drawing, right, Carla?
We're going to draw a winner for a free Peloton exercise bike today. Again, I said it yesterday, as a person who oversees our very robust wellness program at Capture, I love this. So one of you lucky participants will pedal away from this conference with that bike, a Peloton bike, but you can't win if you're not entered. We have over 115 entries, so the chances are really good. And so we want more, but you can't win if you're not entered. So if you haven't done it already, 2 easy steps. First, scan this QR code on the screen and go to Capture Higher Ed's LinkedIn page and give us a follow. Then second, you're going to share the post pinned at the top of our page and share it with your network that you're attending Innovate 2022 on LinkedIn using the hashtag Innovate 2022. And that's it. And the winner will be announced at the end of Innovate today, right here.
I am so excited. And just remember, you have to be in it to win it. So let's do it. 2 steps. You got it. All right, Carla, our first session of the day, post keynote, is called Measure the Impact of Your Enrollment and Marketing Tech Stack. As the enrollment operations increasingly uses an array of technologies to do their work, it's sometimes hard to know how your tech stack, stacks up. That's why we've convened an impressive panel of the leading enrollment management technology and service providers to share information on how they measure the impact of their technology on prospective student behaviors and actions. The discussion will be moderated by Capture's Chief Product Officer, Rajiv Arora, and includes all of his panelists. I won't even spend time listing them. Instead, let's bring everyone in, shall we? Rajiv, how are you?
Rajiv!
Oh, great, Heather and Carla. So nice to see your smiling faces.
So good to see you.
You as well. It's all good to get the gang back together, even if it's virtually.
I know, it's exciting. So sounds
Rajiv,
like you guys have been having a great day.
We're pumped for your session. The question that I've asked all of our presenters so far is, where are you presenting from today?
I am coming to you from Monterey Bay, California. Ooh. I'm on this big, long Father's Day road trip with my daughter. We've covered 2,300 miles out of the 3,000 miles that we're supposed to cover in this 6 days.
I
So,
love it.
so we're almost there.
As a daddy's girl, I love the really strong bond you have with both your daughters. So I think that's pretty awesome and incredible.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
I'm excited to now take a little break from daddy daughter and talk about Capture and see what all exciting things we're doing over here.
I love it. Well, Rajiv, we're going to leave it in your capable hands. Have a great session. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you very much. See you in a few minutes. And I think Farzad's gonna go ahead and join me and share a little bit. So before I bring the panelists in, and we've got an exciting panel today. We've got some of the world's who's who. You'll notice that every single person who will talk about today will talk about student engagement, and that's what we're all about, right? So we're about figuring out where students are really engaging with you and building out the intelligence layer, that behavioral intelligence layer. What are students behaving like? Where are they engaging? And how can we go ahead and do the best job of getting that data for you so you can go ahead and do the marketing? So what is a tech stack anyway? So, you talk about marketing and enrollment, tech stack. And I thought first I'd just kind of outline the concept for you, for people who don't understand that part. And I know that I was one of them just a few years ago. So a tech stack is basically just the different layers of your technology that you're using to be able to go ahead and do your job. Your job is very important in order to be able to go ahead and do enrollment marketing. You need a variety of technologies. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we can give you intelligence about what it is that people are doing with each of these different things together. So your tech stack might include, the things on the left, your CRM, your Slate, or your TargetX. This is where you're putting all of the information about the different people who are applying, the inquiries, what the status is, all of that. But then beyond that, you're trying to do a lot of things with the folks who are in that CRM. For example, you might be doing digital ads, or doing dynamic content on your website, or doing pop-up forms. All of those are things that a marketing automation platform can do. And that's exactly what we do at Capture. And we allow you to go ahead and engage with the students on your website, on Facebook and Instagram and Google Ads, all of those sorts of things. And so you want to know which ads people are working with, which landing pages are really working well, which forms are really working well, which dynamic content is working well. So we want to be able to go ahead and get you that information. Besides the CRM and a marketing automation platform like Capture, you might be doing lots of other things. And those are the kinds of things that you see on the slide today: Platform Q, Unibuddy, Concept 3D, Campus Reel, Campus ESP. These are all different varieties of engagement that you can drive on your website, on other properties on the internet. And you want to be able to go ahead and get all of that intelligence. How are really students engaging? How are parents engaging? Bring all of that back to what it is that is happening, and then be able to drive the next step of the funnel from there. So once we've shown somebody an ad, we want to drive people to the website. Once we've driven them to the website, we want to figure out what their profile really is and what content we should show them next. So Farzad, if you'll move to the next slide, I'll show you an example of that. So this is a visitor profile, which is put together by Capture. And you'll notice that, at the very bottom is the first site visit ever recorded for this person. And you have one of these for every single person who's coming to your website. We start this out when we don't even know anything about this person, except for the fact that it's a new person. And we put a first person cookie on their browser to be able to say, okay, now we know who this person is, at least anonymously, we know this person. And then we can go ahead and follow them through their journey. When they went ahead and did some inquiry, you'll notice that if there is intelligence that we can gather from other places. For example, the third one from the bottom, identify PQE. That's actually a Platform Q event. We've got an integration with them. If somebody is engaging with any of their video content, we're able to go ahead and get data about them, integrated into this student timeline that you're seeing. And obviously, when you have all of this together, we can create a detailed behavior profile. And now we can serve up the exact thing. So we can transition from this mass marketing to very personal. We know exactly who this person is, what their behavior has been. And if we can say, okay, this is a new prospect and they've looked at a video about the business school, let's go ahead and show them now the map or a virtual tour of the business school. We can go ahead and do that, or we can pop up the right form to enable them to get us information about them, their first name, last name, whatever the case might be that you want to know. And slowly but surely, we'll build up that whole profile, which drives you from unknown and not interest to interested, to inquiries, to applications, to hopefully decisions. And we're able to help you find the right people, which are the right fit for your schools. So that's the whole idea behind an enrollment marketing technology stack. Hopefully that makes sense. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and ask Farzad to bring the rest of our panelists in so we can hear about what they're doing with this part. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, Gil. Hello, Brooke. Hello, Rob. Hello, David. Hello, Carlos. So exciting to have you guys all here. Thank you very much for joining Capture during Innovate. I was just showing everyone the few slides about what a technology stack really is and what behavioral engagement is all about. And I've visited each of your websites and talked to you, and I know student engagement probably runs central to almost every single one of you there. So without further ado, I'd love to go ahead and have each of you introduce yourselves about you and about what your company really does, and kind of, what is that core value proposition around student engagement that your company does. And I'll go ahead and pass the baton to you first, Gil. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome, Rajiv. Thank you for having us today, and thank you for Capture for hosting this event. My name is Gil Rogers. I am an executive vice president at Platform Q Education. We develop software and strategies to power video-powered engagement solutions for colleges and universities. And what we mean by that is we know that in response to the global pandemic, many institutions had to quickly integrate things like virtual events and digital content into their plans. But now as we exit the pandemic, how do we do that in a more strategic way to allow for not just live video engagement, but on-demand content, streaming strategies, and how do we best support our institutions and student success in that way? So I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit about that today.
That's awesome, Gil. And we love the integration that we have within our companies and platforms, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Next, Brooke, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today at my very first Innovate conference. My name is Brooke Sternick. I'm the Director of Product at Campus ESP. Campus ESP is a parent engagement platform that helps colleges and universities leverage parent involvement, which we all know is growing, to help colleges and universities increase student yield, retention, student success, parent giving. We work with 230 colleges and universities and just over 3 million parent and family users. As it relates to enrollment marketing, which we're talking about today, the institutions we partner with supplement their student recruiting and enrollment marketing with a parent recruiting and enrollment strategy. It's probably not surprising to hear that parents are extremely influential in the enrollment process. We know that students with an involved parent are more likely to convert from inquiry to applicant, have around 5% higher yield rates. So we like to say that we nudge the nudgers so that parent engagement can support student enrollment efforts.
That's awesome. I like the nudge the nudgers concept. That's beautiful. Carlos, you're next on my Hollywood Squares video. So maybe you want to come on and talk a little bit about yourself and Concept 3D.
Awesome. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Capture. I'm Carlos Perez. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Concept 3D. I think it was Heather or one of the other hosts was asking where we're all coming from. I'm in sunny Denver, Colorado today. Concept 3D is the market leader in interactive maps and virtual tours. So we're all about creating and delivering location-driven virtual experiences that engage audiences, showcase locations, and provide an incredibly effective tool in communicating with that Gen Z prospective applicant. We've served the higher ed community for over 15 years. I'm proud to say we've got over 450 college and university clients. Specific to admissions and enrollment marketers, we support you with interactive and engaging content that showcases your amazing campuses and tells your very unique story. And back to Rajiv's point, you can leverage our content in multiple parts of the journey. And we're really excited to talk about that, talk about our partnership and how we can make the biggest impact as a team here today. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome, Carlos. Welcome, and look forward to our conversation. David Higginson. David, you're next on my screen. And I know that Unibuddy and Capture have been partnering a little bit. And I'm excited to hear about what it is that, your company does and your background. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rajiv. And thanks to Capture for having me down. I'm coming to you guys from London, an unusually fair weather London today, which is nice for us. Super excited. I've been loving the energy on the stream so far. So I'm going to try and bring that to you guys as well today. So yeah, I'm Dave. I work at Unibuddy, looking after product growth. For those of you that don't know Unibuddy, we connect the dots between higher ed institutions and students. Our platform essentially enables those institutions to keep a pulse on student needs as they evolve in real time by leveraging authentic human connection through the ambassadors. Our unique insights across the funnel enable higher ed institutions to be able to proactively engage the students at scale. And we work to multiply the impact of those recruitment activities by bringing the student voice online. We're really excited, as we've been talking about already today, about the potential for that kind of cross-journey tracking and using data to personalize the student experience. Hence, my excitement of being here and the ability to kind of share some of our experiences today.
Great, Dave. You get the prize for coming the longest distance to this virtual event. I'm not sure what time zone it is in London right now, but thank you for joining. And last but not least, Rob, would love to go ahead and bring you on the stage. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Campus Reel.
Thanks, Rajiv. Yeah, we're very excited to be here. My name is Rob Carroll. I'm one of the co-founders of Campus Reel. We do a lot. I think everybody up here does a lot. We support schools across the entire enrollment funnel. Our twist and our slant is video recruitment and enrollment strategies, specifically that authentic student story. We want to help schools scale the amount of video that they have and really bring to light the different experiences and perspectives and variety of students that are represented on campus, whether that's community college or graduate school or a traditional undergrad school. We want to bring that story to life so that we can help schools put really the right content right in front of the right student. And as we all know, when you do that, you increase your enrollment outcomes significantly. So Campus Reel, primarily our customers come to us to scale video, but then we also help them understand how that video and how scaling that video drives the enrollment outcomes that they're looking for, whether it's increased leads, increased yield, reduce stealth, whatever that core objective might be. And then in addition to that core product, we also have our consumer-facing website, campusreel.org, which reaches about 4 million students per year. We have a partner network that includes College Board, Raise Me, College Express. There's about 13 or 14 partners in there that I won't be able to name on the spot. And so we also help take that existing content that schools have put so much effort into making and help them syndicate it so that no matter where that student might be researching your school, your content is there to help influence them and nudge them along. Brooke, I like what you said about nudging the nudgers. I think everybody here to some extent falls into that category, and that resonated with me.
That's awesome, Rob. Hey, listen, so you heard from all of us about what it is that we do. I would love to hear from you, the audience. So please type in your comments about, what it is that you might want to know more about, integrations, about the tech stack, about what it is that each of these companies does. So we'll make sure that we watch your comments. And if there's any questions in there that we can go ahead and post to the panelists, we'll do that. But to start things out, I had a couple of questions that I wanted to start with. Let me start with this one. Each of you obviously is all about engagement. You're all about figuring out how it is that either students or parents, the community at large, is engaging with the online presence that our customers, the universities and colleges, really have. As those people engage, obviously there's lots and lots of data that gets generated. And what I'd love to hear from you is, what is that data that you're making available, about student engagement to our mutual customers, and what are the kind of challenges that either you or your customers are facing as you go ahead and share or use that data? So let's focus in on that data about engagement. Let's talk a little bit about challenges that either you're facing or that your customers might be facing as we go ahead and try to get that student engagement data to people. So this time, let me go ahead and start with Carlos. Carlos, let's hear from you and talk about the data that you're sharing and what your experience really has been as our customers consume that data.
Sure. So data from us comes in a number of different buckets, and so maybe I'll kind of hit on a few of those areas, and then circle back to the second question in terms of like some of the challenges. So the first bucket would be a thorough understanding of visits and engagement within our interactive tours, interactive maps and virtual tours. So through Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, we enable our clients to understand anything and everything that they're clicking on and engaging with, that their audience members are clicking on and engaging with through our virtual platforms. So whether that's how often they're getting visitors, engagement time, trends over time, or its engagement with any of the content, because we have a dynamic interactive content that we make available and that our clients can make available, whether that's audio content, video content, PDFs, links to other websites. So engagement with all that is available. So that's kind of one bucket. Mm-hmm. A second bucket is we enable forms and data collection through our virtual tours and interactive maps. So whether you want to capture interest form, whether you want to capture if somebody wants to apply, whether somebody wants to talk or schedule an interview or schedule a time with somebody, all of that data can be collected, and it can be presented at different places through our tours or interactive maps. So when a new audience member comes on to the tour, you can present it there, or maybe it's when they click through, or maybe it's when they actually click on a CTA, a call to action button, mm-hmm. and say, hey, I want to provide you with more information. So that's kind of a second bucket, and that information can go to your CRM or any place that you like to collect.
Yep.
The third is what you mentioned at the top, Rajiv, and so we're super excited to part with marketing automation and marketing solution leaders like Capture, and so we have the ability to take your tracking capabilities and embed them into our tours and maps, so that you can create that journey that you referenced at the beginning of your opening, and see how Concept 3D and virtual tour is part of that journey, just like Platform Q and consumption of Platform Q content would be another piece of that journey, right? And so the ability to track that journey and Concept 3D's participation in that is another piece. So those are kind of some of the key data areas. In terms of challenges, that our clients have, I don't know how much we want to dig into each, but certainly,
give us the top one, Carlos,
yeah,
and then we'll hear from. I'm sure there'll be some repeating patterns that we'll hear from everybody else also.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, I think the biggest challenge is what do you do with that insight and information, right? And so you've got this data, but I loved where you open up, Rajiv, in terms of like, okay, how do you take insight and information and turn it into action, right? As marketers, we all want to deliver the right content to the right person, right channel, right time. And so what we work with our clients to do is be able to tailor and adjust, right? So we have an open a CMS content management system where our clients can dig in and adjust content whenever they need, right? So you get insights that something is working well or something is not working well. You want to adjust, right? Or back to your journey, you understand that international students or STEM students or DEI students have particular areas of interest. We allow our clients to focus and develop tailored tours, develop unique and interactive mapping experiences. And so we're enabling our clients to connect the dots between insight and what action they have, right?
I love that. I love that connection there. Let's not just have data stand alone, but let's have data drive insights, insights drive actions. Gil, maybe I'll bring you on next and have you sort of follow on and say, so Carlos just talked about, the different kinds of data and how they can drive insights and action. What's the kind of data that you're enabling to be shared, and what's the experience that customers have around that?
Yeah, so I think and Carlos mentioned this, one of our products name is called Conduit, right? And Conduit, when you go to Home Depot or you go to Lowe's and you go to the conduit aisle, what is a conduit? A conduit is a pipe. It's a connector. It's something that brings things together, right? So in a lot of ways, that's the data we provide, right? Is all of the data around all of that engagement, particularly when we connect Conduit to things like Captures, Engage, and things like Concept 3D Tours. We can serve as that identification point for all of that great traffic you were talking about at the beginning, right? When you have those anonymous visitors coming to your site and you have all of the activity that they're taking, what if we could identify that more of those students, when they're engaging with your video content, when they're downloading your documents, when they're clicking your links, when they're visiting your tour, right? Institutions have a choice where we send students when we're promoting video content. We could point them to a YouTube page where we kind of lose all traffic at some point, and they see ads for other schools they're being remarketed by. They see what's next videos that are completely off brand. Or we can send them to our own streaming platform to engage with our content and all of the other content that we're aggregating in this space. So that's a lot of what we do, is the data that we're providing is the engagement with all of that content and then connecting it together with other services, particularly with things like Engage and Concept 3D Tours. I think the biggest challenge, and I'm sure Rob and his team have probably felt this as well, is that a lot of our clients are seeing is how do we integrate building video content into our day-to-day when we're being asked to do all of the things we were doing prior to the pandemic at the same level, while also creating video content with less people because of the Great Resignation and with less time and effort and resources. And so, a lot of what we see our partners doing is relying on us and people like Campus Real and others to help them with the strategy around what videos are going to resonate, how long they need to be, what type of content, and then the format for that. And I think everybody's got their own different flavor of ice cream when it comes to how that video is packaged, accessed, and delivered. And I think, one of the things we see is the more institutions kind of can trust the experts to help them nudge the nudgers. We're going to keep coming back to that one, Brooke. Is really where we shine, right? So we encourage our partners to kind of trust us to help them drive what that strategy is, and then make that production actually happen.
That's good, Gil. And Rob, since Gil mentioned a couple times your company, maybe talk a little bit about the data. And I noticed in the comments, there's at least a couple of people who are saying, hey, how about grad schools? What can you really do to simplify that process? And I don't know if you've got specific things that, you may want to say about, what it is that grad schools can do, with the data that you're providing, or kind of, the whole marketing tech stack in general.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Gil was just saying, and that everyone on the panel has said so far. I would look at Campus Real data in kind of two buckets. I mentioned that we have this partner network that we work with, College Board or RaiseMe and all these other college search tools. We're receiving about 50 million requests for content through that network every single year. And that's more like the reach, brand recognition, kind of exposure element to college search, which is at the earliest moment that these students are conducting their research, we want to help you impact them through content. Now, on that type of data, we're going to have all the kind of normal demographic data you'd expect, like the region, the geography, the time, the device, stuff like that. I think where Campus Real and all of these platforms get very exciting is what we can do beyond that on the more personal layer, right? Really helping you understand who's watching this content, why are they watching it, what do they want from you, and ultimately, what's their real intent behind that? What's the real intent behind that student? I think, though, that goes for both undergraduate and graduate. I think undergrad and grad are struggling with the same problems, which is how do you actually figure out who's genuinely interested in you? And I know, Rajiv, I think the second half of your original question is what's the biggest challenge that we see with our clients? This is, I think, more just an insight or observation on my part for the industry as a whole. I think like the entire industry, both grad and undergrad, but it might be a little less applicable depending on the type of graduate program, because centralized name buying doesn't really exist in the same way. Yeah. But I think the strategies that schools have used over the last 10 or 20 years are not going to be what makes them successful over the next 10 or 20. And traditionally, a lot of schools rely on name buying, right? Like purchase 100,000 or 200,000 names to fill that funnel at the outset. I look at that as symptomatic of a larger problem, which is an inability to generate your own funnel. I think every single tool on this platform helps colleges, graduate programs, undergrad, whoever it is, even high schools, for instance, we work with some of them, to generate their own names. And when you do that, your entire funnel shifts, right? Like we have clients, for instance, where 80% of their funnel, 90% is purchase. None of those people ever convert into applications or enrollments. They never do. If you run the data, you'll see that's the case. If you shift that funnel to 80% organic lead generation is what we call it, the outcomes just speak for themselves. Like it just comes through naturally. And so I think most schools have a really tough time of creating that organic funnel for themselves. You need a good marketing tech stack to do that. That's exactly what this entire event is about. How do you create a marketing tech stack in 2022 that allows you to create an enrollment funnel that works for you? And so I think that's one of the biggest opportunities in the industry. I think there's also a lot beyond just helping. I think there's a lot to the name buying space that's not really healthy for our clients or for the users who are the products of that, right? Like users are data points. It's not healthy really for anybody involved. And I think one of our biggest challenges, but also our biggest opportunity as a company, but also as a group on this call, is how we shift the industry to that more tailored quality over quantity perspective. That's the key, like quality over quantity. We're not going to give you 40,000 names, but the ones that Campus Real gives you, and might be the case for others, are going to enroll at your school 11 times more often than a generic name buy. And it can be hard to get that message across. So sorry, that was a little long-winded.
No, this is great. So, you kind of transitioned us to kind of the next part of our talk that I wanted to go to anyways. The theme for Innovate this time is how do we help our customers find balance, in this cacophony that's out there. And I think part of what you talked about, Rob, where, we're shifting from just this name buy to kind of more organic funnel, I think is kind of finding that balance. Especially on the grad school side, like you said, there isn't really a place that you can go ahead and buy all of these names. And who thought that the GRE might actually end up being test optional? So those kinds of strategies where we can go ahead and do organic funnel management is obviously going to help people find that balance. David, I'm going to ask you to come next and kind of talk, maybe real briefly about the data and the problems, but sort of give us your advice on how it is that all of us can work together to really help our customers find that balance and work more effectively rather than just harder, run faster. How do we work more intelligently?
Yeah, thanks so much, Rajiv. And I really echo the other panelists so far. And Rob, I love what you're saying about the name buying. We're seeing the same thing in all of our student research, that it's kind of not resonating. And that even extends into the graduate admissions world as well. I think that the Unibuddy data is similar to some of the other panelists. I think the thing that's the twist for us is all about the conversation insights. So it's being able to see in real time what students are saying and us adding that kind of machine learning dimension so that you can filter those conversations and see really get a pulse onto what's being said by the students in real time. And I think that's one of the things we're really excited about is taking it from the interaction data, which is foundational to understanding that kind of trail of decisions that a student makes, to then actually really building out a individual unique profile on that student and making sure that they fit the institution and your existing student community, rather than, as Rob was kind of touching on, this kind of anonymous name buying a process that we've seen in the past. I think in terms of the challenges that we see, and I'm sure everyone on this panel appreciates this challenge, is the CMS is the single source of truth for universities. It's the most important thing, and there are a heck of a lot of them. There's a lot of CMSs out there, some of them very bespoke, some of them are kind of larger players. And so one of the things I think, and it's what Capture is kind of talking about today, is super exciting, is that ability to streamline the data that we're capturing and kind of feed it. There's disparate kind of data sources into the CMS in a way that makes sense. I spoke to an institution once that I think had upwards of 40 different CRM systems in operation at the same time across all their different departments. I know with Slate's been flying the flag of kind of fixing this single source of truth problem, but helping institutions to find that kind of synergy between their tech stack and make sure that everything is in the right place is really important. And I think my final point in terms of how we can work better together is really events like this and understanding each other's offerings even better than we currently do. I think helping universities to see where they're going to use Platform Q, where they're going to have Campus Reels video, where they're going to use Unibuddy's ambassadors, and how the kind of handoff of the student experience looks, and making sure that no student is left behind or dropped between those different stages. It's going to be really, really crucial as we move away from that traditional, having ambassadors call up people or sending out letters, and more towards this really nice, personalized, unified experience that we're trying to create. So I'm really excited to hear, already hearing about your guys' different solutions has been super exciting.
We're all learning from each other, I think, and that's the whole idea behind making sure that the entire tech stack can actually go ahead and integrate and exchange data back and forth. And Brooke, last but not least, I do want to bring you on, and you maybe track a little bit of a different audience, right? So the rest of us are kind of focusing on the student and the person that we're trying to enroll. You really are kind of on the nudger aspect. How can we get the parent data in? So talk a little bit about how your data is different and what kind of data you're trying to get to our mutual customers. What are the problems, and then how do we go ahead and make it all better with integration between our solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because we're dealing with a different audience with parents, it is even more important that our data flows seamlessly between all the platforms, because in order to see any of the results of parent engagement, you have to get the parent record tied back to the student record, whether that's the CRM or the student information system. So it is really important that the data we expect our data to be looked at in other platforms, and that it needs to easily be connected back to the student. So, well, in terms of the data we offer, of course, there's different dashboards for different user types, but high level, we have parent engagement levels, like parent signups and usage over time. On the enrollment side, we have a feature called Parent Promoter Score, which is a parent engagement score that shows which parents are most involved, which the research shows correlates with higher likelihood to enroll. So of course, in order for an institution to leverage that data, it needs to be tied back to which student we think is more likely to enroll. There are plenty of content results across email, text messaging, advertisements. So helping schools see data like open rate and click rate, reply rate, and helping schools understand which content is resonating most with parents, which not surprisingly is sometimes very different. Schools may have a good grasp on how to engage students, but parents care about different things like cost and security than students. Parents care more about COVID. So I would say one of our biggest challenges, we have all this great data, but one of our biggest challenges is actually making our customers aware of the results. Of course, folks are really busy in higher ed. So how do we get their attention, and how do we make it easy to see a quick snapshot that something's working? Or even better, how do we make our functional user, how do we make it easy for them to pass along a win to their boss or some other decision makers? One thing we do is we just try to make it as easy as possible to get the data out of our platform. So we do something called monthly engagement reports, where we summarize some of the quick wins. But even though everyone on this call, we all work in technology, we love technology, we see the power in technology, I still think there's nothing better than actually having meetings with customers to take them through the results. We do a 6-week check-in right after launch to help show some quick wins. We do a lot of, I'm sure everyone else on this call does this too, but I think we could expect our team to also understand the value of all the other products and services in the higher ed space, and understand how our tools integrate, or understanding where colleges are usually more likely to use Slate for events than Campus ESP, or there's plenty of areas where our customers prefer some of Platform Q's functionality over ours, which is normal and in part of the process. So kind of helping customers understand where to use each product, but helping them understand the results from each product, and understanding how results from our product can help support results from other products. There's the integration piece, but there's also the in-person conversation piece of helping folks understand how all the data works together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think both your and Capture, your company and Capture, not only do we have the technology platforms, and I'm sure this is true of the rest of the folks in the panel too, we've got that services layer. So how many of you are doing these in-person meetings? Maybe kind of raise hand. Yes, that's perfect. So this is great. Because one of the questions that also came out is, how do you help admissions team leverage the data that you are providing? And how do you ensure that they don't slide back? And I think these kinds of in-person meetings, obviously we got to go ahead and cook up and create the dashboards and all of that. These kind of in-person meetings are another way to go ahead and do that. I think we're coming close to the end of our time here, but let me kind of throw out an open question to everybody. Slate came up many different times, and how CRM is kind of the center of the universe. I'm sure many times people ask you, can I just do what I do with you in Slate? So does anybody want to jump in and say what's your usual answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably start, and I'll pass the baton to the others, but I think there's at the end of the day, any software solution has some sort of comparable solution somewhere, right? It depends on how you want to try to work to make it work. And I feel like when we talk to our customers, I'll say that more than half of our clients are Slate users. And the reason why they use Conduit and the reason why they choose Platform Q Education is because while the functionality may be there in Slate, just like any other system, you need to know how to use it, and you need to know how to make it work right. And if they don't have support, they don't have the setup or a consultant to help them get it going, they turn to a provider that has a best-in-class tool. I kind of equate it to other CRM platforms. If I compare Slate to Salesforce to some extent, right? Like you can send emails through Slate and Salesforce, but there's also email marketing solutions that have great functionality that feed into that platform and provide for reporting. You can send text messages through Slate or Salesforce or others, but there are text messaging platforms that integrate via API or SFTP to make that happen, just like with a video streaming platform. And at the end of the day, if you don't have the strategy around what type of video to create, when to release it, how to market it, who to feature in those videos, Slate's not going to do that part for you, right? And so if you have the ability to leverage the best-in-class tools and stack them on in the theme of a tech stack on top of the CRM as an engagement layer, that's where all of these companies and these tools come in, is providing you that missing piece to that Lego set, so to speak.
That's awesome. Well, with that, we're gonna let you have that last word, Gil. Thank you, panelists, so much for joining. Wonderful, wonderful panel. Hope to do this again very, very soon. Farzad, I know you got to move us on to the next thing, so please feel free to go ahead and do that.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Rajiv.
Sure thing.
I gotta say, first of all, I want to congratulate Rajiv for staying on time.
No kidding. That was impressive. Well done, Rajiv. Way to keep us on schedule.
Well done.
Hey, I could have gone on probably for another hour. That was just an amazing panel, and so many, unique products, but all working together and, sending all of their data back into Capture to create that profile and the intelligence layer. I was excited. I can't wait to do this again next year.
Well, I think you really pack a punch when you integrate with such amazing companies, and your tech stack is pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Every layer of each one of those individual companies just gives us even more and more of a holistic view of that prospective student, and just puts a lot of power into the hands of enrollment managers and marketers today. It's super exciting.
Exactly. And that's our job. Our job is to make sure that we help them do that identification and conversion and enrollment. So I know that all of our partners and us are excited to work with the customers. So you guys got to go on to the next one.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, thanks so much. And, after hearing from so many cool ed tech companies, this might be another good time for a Capture commercial, or let's call it a word from our sponsor. Here is Jeff Hill, Director of Outreach at DigiPenn Institute of Technology, talking about how Capture gives his school larger historical context so they can communicate with their prospective students earlier in the college search process.
Bring it.
It just gives us much larger historical context of the behaviors of students earlier in their college search process, so that we can get in front of them, communicate with them earlier, make sure that that DigiPenn is a good fit for them, and share with them what we offer. Sure if the viewers know much about the daily visitor reports, but each of my staff members gets their DVR segregated by their territories around the country, and I kind of spearhead the efforts on what to do with those DVRs, but my staff do know that they need to be checking those, a couple times a week. It's impossible to look at those every single day with all that we have going on, which is no problem. But what it does nicely is it puts a lot of pieces together and tells a full story about the students that are within their territories, that they're learning about, that they're coming to know, that they're nurturing, that they're communicating with in various ways, that they know that are coming to their virtual events or their in-person events, or that they're going to go see when they travel out to their college fair. So the nice thing about the DVRs is that it shows them the behaviors of those prospective students on our website. And it really gives us insights into what they're most interested in. And what's nice about it is that with that, and with utilizing our CRM, which is Slate, which a lot of people use, we can tell when students take action. We can see the emails that are sent to them. We can see the contents that's sent to them. We can tell what they click on, and we can know what they're most interested in. And that just gives us great insight into how to formulate a conversation with a student, maybe information that we can tell that they want but they don't quite have, or anticipate questions that they might ask us, or if they didn't ask us those questions, give them the answer anyway. So there's a lot of ways in which we can string together helpful and useful information, especially with a prospective student or family member, maybe a first-gen college student that they don't even know what question to ask. They don't even know they know what they were clicking on, but they didn't know that there's a step further that they could take to understand how they might have access to a resource. But what I think it does for us that is new to us, actually, since we really introduced Capture into our lives at DigiPen, is it just gives us much larger historical context of the behaviors of students earlier in their college search process, so that we can get in front of them, communicate with them earlier, make sure that that DigiPen is a good fit for them, and share with them what we offer. And we offer all of our degrees, for the most part, are within the STEM field. So, they talk a lot about in fact, I was just in another webinar about the 2025 enrollment cliff, with less students graduating from high school. And so just really making sure that we're tailoring our communication, that the funnel now is no longer just, buy 100,000 names and see where they drop. It's buy the right names and talk to the right type of student, and make sure that they're the right fit, and retention is a whole big part of this piece. And so all of these sort of platforms and solutions married together, I think, are going to be helpful for us, as to sort of formulate and work with marketing in our email communications, to understand what students want to hear from us, when they want to hear it, when we need to make the next step on inviting them to campus, or giving them a phone call, or sending them a text messages, or inviting them to our Discord, or all day long they can access us from 100 different points in the world. And so making sure that the points by which we do that are going to give us the best return.
Oh, we're back. Hey, gang, I hope you enjoyed a little message from Jeff. And once again, big thank you to the marketing team for that groovalicious back music. That was fantastic. So before we hop into our very next session, which I'm super pumped about, I want to make sure that everyone remembers that at the end of the day today, we are going to be drawing for that Peloton bike, and a special visit from Carla and I to take that first ride with you. That's optional. In order to get into the drawing, you have to do two things. First, scan this QR code on your screen and go to Capture Higher Ed's LinkedIn and follow us. Second, share the post that's pinned at our page, and share with your network that you're attending Innovate 2022 on LinkedIn, and use the hashtag Innovate 2022. So
now,
get in it to win it.
Get in it to win it, please. Now it's time for our next session, the Convergence of Behavioral and Emotional Intelligence, with Joe Bauman, Senior Vice President of Enrollment at Duquesne University, Bob Longmire, President at Longmire & Company, and our very own Chris Harris, Senior Enrollment Strategist at Capture Higher Ed. Guys, there's never been a more digitally native generation than Gen Z. Most of these young people have enjoyed classroom access to the internet and digital technology from their earliest grades. On average, they spend almost 10 hours a day online. I feel like maybe that's a little more. But now, as they search for the right college or university, it's vitally important for you to understand how prospective students feel about your institution and behave as you connect with them through digital strategies. Let's go to Chris, Bob, and Joel. Welcome. It's all you guys.
Gentlemen.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody.
And Joel, I think that you're our first presenter to do a session from their vehicle.
Mobile presenting, you know what? It's 2022.
It's a whole new world out there.
It's a whole new world. All right, guys, we will get out of the way and let you take the wheel, Chris.
That's awesome. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Carla. Good to see you guys again this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. I was just on LinkedIn there trying to get my my invite in to get the Peloton. So hopefully everybody has done what they needed to do that. And I want to welcome everybody to our session today, where we talk about the emotional intelligence and how we blend that in with the behavioral intelligence. And we have two great presenters with us today. Joel Bauman from Duquesne University and Bob Longmire from Longmire and Company, and we have a great show for us today. So I want to make sure that we go ahead and put the slideshow up for us. There we go. And when we talk about the convergence of everything, what we're here today to talk about is the enrollment marketing leaders face an uphill battle. And that uphill battle is this. We all know about the cliff that's coming with regarding the population. We know that there's more competition than ever before as well. But everything's kind of changed since COVID as well. So it's making sure that we take our steps forward to make sure that we make every interaction count when we're doing the recruitment of prospective students. Enrollment management has turned both to an art and a science. We're using data every day to make sure that we have all of the important decisions that we can make about spend, about how we interact with students. But there's that art piece of it too, where we create relationships, and we're really going to get into that today with Bob. And what's the best way for you to leverage both emotional and behavioral data? We're going to talk about that. And finally, what's the best practice in measuring and evaluating your messaging today? So we talk about the enrollment roller coaster, and I have a great graphic here. It just talks about how a student walks through this process and how they walk in and out of different ways they're interacting with you. But it's an up and downhill battle, and sometimes it takes 8, 10, 15 times to even make contact with a student. But how are you delivering different messages at different times to make sure that that student is receiving the information that they need, not necessarily what you want them to see, but what they need to help make their decisions? So a lot of times, you'll see students do online search, and then you back that up with an email, or maybe you've purchased their name and you're sending out email and print and things like that. But this is a process that goes through this. And one thing that Bob brought up earlier today, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later, is process. Are we relying more on processes, or are we relying a little bit more, or need to be relying a little bit more on how we interact with folks as well? So when we come together right now, and I was thinking about that song, Come Together, of course, and then Joel broke in the song, and everybody started singing, and we got through that whole piece during our practice. But there's a convergence of two sets of information. You have the behavioral intelligence that captures on a day-to-day basis, and then emotional intelligence that Bob's company with Longmire and Company brings together, and how Joel in the middle takes all of that information and then enables his counselors. And I think that's the most important thing, is how he enables his counselors to make sure that they are making the right connections with the right students at the right time to help them navigate that process so that they're making the best decision for them, which in turn will make the best decision for the institution as they move through and enroll. So a little bit about Longmire. We're going to turn it over to Bob here in a second, but they're located in Kansas City, and Bob has been doing a lot of different things for the higher ed area for a very long time. And Bob, I was a fan when I was seated for 25 years, always getting involved with the co-sponsored studies and stuff like that. We're going to talk about some of that stuff today, but Bob, and I know Joel will attest to this too, we have used Longmire's information on the emotional side of recruiting to help us formulate our brand. So Bob, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit more about what you do and how we can talk about these co-sponsored studies together.
Well, the first thing is that I'm heartened that Joel's car is not moving. And I'm also really heartened that you're not behind the wheel, Joel. That could be dangerous.
I can only multitask so much.
Yeah, well, good. We have a long history in higher ed. If you're unfamiliar with Longmire and Company, we believe that the conversations between colleges and the students that they're trying to recruit can be much richer and more fruitful for both. Because when that happens, both sides are better served. The student is put into the right college. The college knows that student and what they can do for them. So this is the list of things that we do that I'm not going to bore you with. Chris, do you have control over?
I have control.
All right, good.
So as we move through, Bob, when we talked about this study, we're going to talk a little bit about the results of this study. You had more than 6,000 prospective students participate in this study about emotional intelligence, but it was really, the purpose was to isolate and respond to the variety of stresses and anxiety that students are having every day. So what made you think about, why did you want to study that particular that concept this time?
Just because of what we observed, the types of conversations that prospective students are having with counselors or others on campus. That could be faculty, it could be other students, it doesn't make any difference. And so we wanted to really understand what they were thinking, and more importantly, what were they feeling? People buy what you do because it makes them feel good. There's lots of different ways and lots that you can buy a car on, the exact same car, but you may prefer going to a specific dealership because they make you feel like you're going to be well treated. They have coffee in the waiting room. They, whatever it is that they do, they set themselves apart. And colleges do, in many cases, do that. And in some cases, they kind of fall down doing that. And one of the things that where colleges can help themselves is by making the process less stressful for students. Every year we do, among other things, we do what we call co-sponsored studies. We'll get 40, 50 colleges involved, and we'll say, we're studying this topic. And so why don't you jump in? We're going to survey your pool of students for the upcoming class, and we're going to compare it to those of other colleges that were involved with these studies that we do, or that particular study. And one of the studies was all about how they feel about their college selection process and going through the process. And you'll see here on this particular slide, the question on that was, and I'm going to read it to you. The question on that was, how much do you think colleges attempt to reduce student stress during the college selection decision? And then, when you look at the word cloud, the biggest word that comes up there, which is most oftenly used, is information. And so we were saying, okay, what do they mean by information? So then we can dive down into that and say, what is it that they're saying? And let me just read you a couple of examples to give you a sense of what we found in that particular study and what it means in terms of our interactions with specific students. We asked, what do colleges do that causes student stress during the college selection process? And here's a couple of things. I'll just read 3 of the things that they say, that are kind of representative of what we see in the thousands of people who answered that question. They say a lot of their websites really make you dig for information, which can lead to stress by not finding out what you need to know. Another person said, a lot offer the same vague information that doesn't set them apart from others when they are paying that much money. You want to know clearly where and for what it is going to. Somebody else said they're bombarding us with emails. We saw that a lot, just in bombarding them with information. And so a lot of the things that we're doing actually causes stress, even though we don't want to cause them stress. And if you could go to the next slide.
Sure.
We also wanted to ask on the reverse side of that, if these are things that colleges are doing that stresses you out, what helps you? What relieves that stress? And you can see here that how did colleges alleviate stress? They asked me questions. And very much, we know that this, when we're recruiting students and managing millions and millions of records of students, it's really easy to start pulling back and start making decisions completely based upon the data that you see. But the thing about it is that people buy because they feel good about something, and they enroll in colleges because they'll say, I felt at home there. Everybody that I saw was like me, those types of things. And one of the first things that they said in terms of how can we alleviate stress, is they want us to ask questions of them. They want us to probe to find out what it is that we need and how they can help. Why don't you advance to the next slide and let's just take a look at the presence of stress in the college selection process. We asked, as you can read here, how often did you experience stress and anxiety during the college selection process? And you can see here that it's a big number. 70% of students said that they either were stressed always or frequently stressed out. And the thing about it is that whose job is it to reduce that stress? The student doesn't know how to do it, so we have to do it. And so we have to find out everything that we can do for a particular student to help reduce the amount of stress that they're feeling. And every student is different. Well, you can do that. You can do that by surveying them, for example. There's many ways to do it, talking to them, having conversations with counselors, and so on and so forth. But making the effort to try to understand how Mary is feeling or how John is feeling, and what is it that they need that I can do to help them, is extremely beneficial to them. And when that happens, they begin to see the institution in a different light. And now they're not so much stressed out. Now they're looking at things to do. They're looking at other people on campus, and they're getting to know the campus. So, and then go to the next slide, if you would, Chris.
Sure.
We asked, what was your overall stress level during your college selection process? And we can see here that 63% say that they are either in a state of medium stress or high stress. As a matter of fact, those two numbers were about equal. 32% said medium, 31% said somewhat high. And so what is it we do with that? What we do is that we engage them, and we can say, picking a college is a stressful process. You've got distance, you've got the money issue, you've got where are my friends, all of these other things are so stressed out. I always advise colleges to survey them, talk to students, have focus groups, and so on and so forth, where they can understand what's causing student stress and anxiety. And as a matter of fact, we do workshops on that, where we teach counselors how to have better, richer conversations with students. And it's kind of interesting. Most colleges don't do that as much as they should. And we have an exercise where and I'll keep it short, Chris, I promise, but it's instructive. We have groups of tables when we're, working with a college. And there's 3 people at each table. One plays the counselor, one plays the student, and the other plays the, did I say admission counselor already? It's admission counselor, current student, and an observer.
Right.
And this is what we ask them to do. They say, okay, we say, we're going to give you 15 minutes. And your role as a counselor is to spend 10 minutes doing nothing but asking questions of that prospective students, probing what it is that they want, asking them where else are they thinking about going to college, what are their fears, what are their aspirations, and you have to do that for 10 minutes. And basically, on average, the average counselor can only ask questions for about 90 seconds. Then they run out of questions. And at the end of the workshop that we do, we teach them how to keep doing that and answering probing questions. And they can do that after they practice and learn some skills. They can spend 10 full minutes doing nothing but asking students a student specific question. And I would try the home game.
Right.
If you're an admission counselor and you've got a director of admissions, the director of admissions, go ahead and get 3 people, and ask them to go through that process. See how long your people can ask questions and probe to find out what really it is that's driving that student's college selection decision.
Right. I think that's an important point, Bob, is to create those relationships, but also to be able to identify what is important to that student so that you're not wasting their time or your time at the same time. And I know that, Joel and I have been in charge of onboarding counselors for a number of years and trying to get them to take that next step instead of just checkbox, getting test score names and stuff like that. What a great exercise that is, Bob, to talk about. So when we talk about parents, and yesterday, Laura Rudolph from Transy talked about communication with parents. Obviously, you asked the same question of this: characterize your parents' level of stress during your college selection process. And just like students, it appears that just like students, parents are having issues as well.
They are, because many of them have never gone through the process before. And they love you for it because it generates a richer conversation and one that we can help them. You can't help everybody, but when we help them, they appreciate it, and it sets us apart.
So I think one of the things that we talked about, and you just kind of touched upon it, Bob, talking about the extra training, is how much colleges attempt to understand prospective student stress. And there are some that are really good out there. Obviously, I'm assuming that Duquesne does really well at this, to be recognized by Scott Jasic yesterday as one of the best around. I think they do a really good job at that. But, it appears that we're just trying to fill out a card or something like that to get extra data, but we're not really doing anything to understand prospective student stress at all, are we?
Well, it's the technology that we have now is so great that you can, I know you do this, Chris, you can pinpoint this and look and see what television show somebody's watching.
Right.
And that's great because that gives you insight into the student. What is it that they want? What might I be able to send them that gets them interested in our institution? But what I'm recommending is that, yes, do all of those fantastic things. They're great. But also, you've got to come down to there's an emotional level at some point where you have to communicate with somebody based upon what it is that they want to see and they hear. And a lot of that very often is just through human interaction.
So when you talk about the end of the study, one of the things we talk about is, do colleges seriously consider talk to you about stress? 21% said yes, which was, a pretty low percentage, I thought. But what was even stood out more to me was the fact that it was the admissions counselor. 60% of the interaction about stress with that prospective student was done with the admissions counselor, and maybe not somebody who was seasoned in being that that conduit of professionalism and helping reduce that stress. But we're also not using our current students as much as well, because only 54% said that they actually spoke with a our current student anyway, to get through that process. Bob, what do you really take away from these two numbers here?
That we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
The percentage of people who as I said earlier, want to talk about themselves. They're happy to do it, and we can engage them and enable them to do that and understand what it is that is going to be most attractive to a prospective student or group of students.
Right.
It's kind of disheartening, though, who said, and the way we asked that question was, did the colleges you seriously consider talk about your stress, which was the previous slide? And that was 21%, which is too low, because hopefully we'd be talking to 80% of students with in-depth conversation about what we can do for them and what it is that they want and need in a college. And that could be done electronically, by the way. You have a big database of students, and there are ways, obviously, to modify surveys so that you can get at what it is that they want and use that information to better serve them, which is really what it's all about. So anyway, The bottom line is really just to understand who it is that you're talking with, and whether it's in mass or on an individual basis, and find ways that you can communicate with them, that you can provide them the information that they need, and hopefully serve them better.
Right. So when we talk about mission, and Joel, here's where we're going to talk about Duquesne, finding out that mission and message and mission and putting it all together. I think it's an important thing. And Rajiv's program just before this one, he talked about volume and how we still are buying 500, 600, 700,000 names, but are we buying those because we have to, or are we buying those because we don't know any better kinds of situations? So Joel, let's talk a little bit about Duquesne, and I'll turn it over to you, and I'll just drive.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and great to see you, Bob. And like you, Chris, Bob and I have worked together in a couple of different contexts and over the years, and it happens to fit pretty well with adapting the technology to treating students as individuals and learning more about them as opposed to just segment in the funnel. So a little bit about Duquesne, Parklight campus, right in downtown, beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, vibrant Pittsburgh, founded in 1878, Catholic mission and spirit and identity, and finding out more about the students and their individual needs and potential and their aspirations led to the research that produced the "It's Time for Bigger Goals" tagline, and finding what they do best and where they're best, where their future is best, and how we can help them is right there baked into the mission of the institution. A lot of exciting things happening, 80 programs, undergraduate programs, 9 schools, and a new proposed college of osteopathic medicine coming along as a way of understanding our context. In our particular area, the context is dire. It is not breaking news for folks to know the Northeast, Middle Atlantic states and the Midwest demographics are not trending in the best direction. So this is where the publics are at, and we have not been immune. And so we've had to do some things to turn this around. And the next slide. And so our approach at this point was seeing what we're seeing in the context, knowing what our mission is, which is to provide personalized information, personalized support to students. Students are at the pole star of the decisions we make as an institution, and thinking about how to do that ahead of when students apply, because the research shows only 3 out of 10 students will ever change the order of schools when they apply. And so we need to have a wider funnel, whether that's through demand generating programs, osteopathic medicine, or through building the funnel in various ways. So that's job one in our new enrollment plan: generate and grow demand, and increase the pool of qualified applicants who see Duquesne University as their first choice school before they ever apply. And so that means gathering information, surveying students, understanding more about them and their contexts and their needs and their stresses, long before the application, as the expanded inquiry card, as some people use an application. And so that's our approach: inquiry management, prospect management, guide and direct those that are most likely or most desirable to apply and enroll. And then we have various techniques early in the funnel to manage those students into the admissions process. So interactivity scores, how interactive is a student, not just blasting out the emails and the collateral, surveying, behavior-based and demonstrated interest scores, and not just the quantity of behavior, but also the timing, when they're doing it and how they're doing it. So to allow the algorithm to build, to allow the technology to support communications based on their activities and based on their interests, but also to then respond to, and the training that Bob provides and we did for our counselors as well, which is to feel, felt, found. It allows us to say, I'm hearing you feel this way. Many of our students have felt this way, and it's of course organized around what we know about their particular interests or their points of pain or stress, and we found and offer a solution. And so the next slide, I think, will go a little bit into the everybody's favorite funnel statistics, if you're in this game. And we had been fairly flat in the admit pool had a nice 70% admit rate, pretty consistent high 20s yield rate, and that of course exacerbated by COVID. So that's been a downward trend. And so again, job one is increase the funnel, increase conversions from inquiries to applicants, make sure we're first choice to see that yield trend turn around in the future. And the way we do that is combining, the next slide, please.
Oh, sure.
Dynamic and personalized content based on a student journey. And this is based on student journeys, through the website and through the technology. And so these are some samples of campaigns we run and a pop-up that we, toaster ad that we produce based on the algorithm in the system to their behaviors. And it's changed. So it's not just what they do, it's when they do it. So we know whether they're a prospect, whether they're an inquiry, whether they're an applicant or an admit. So based on all that information, they get this information that is customized to where they are in the journey with a robust set of information, gauges, and results that we can track daily, weekly, and at the end of the cycle so that we can make adjustments. And those, you see the results on the bottom. Each and every application through the funnel, each and every interaction through the funnel is measured, and then we're feeding distinct messages based on that information. So here's another set of information all through the funnel. A is you can see our location, you can see excitement and affinity building. We know a lot of our students are interested in are socially minded, and so it's important for us always to show groups of students engaging. And fast is our orientation, some orientation. So we're trying to drive people to make sure to join us on campus. Each, as you may have heard on other segments, each of our counselors has a set of filters that they can go in and understand where their individual students are in the journey. And on the right, you can see we can gauge quickly what their engagement score is, what their lifetime affinity index score is, and then where in the website, where they're visiting and when on the right-hand side. And then we take all that information, all the algorithmic information, all the contents that's pushed out by design, and then put in what Bob had talked about, which is now that we know the student, how does a counselor then personally interact and show that personal attention that we think is distinctive about Canaan in our mission. And so these are examples of what we call arsenal items. Many of them, these are going to be print that we can put with a personal note, handwritten, and then put in the mail. And so not only the student, but the family knows, the parents can see it arrive and know we're taking the time to do a personal outreach. And these are designed to answer what is in the individual survey that resulted in the national numbers that Bob showed us. We have which individual questions, which stressors for every student is. We see what their behavior is. We ask the questions, and then the counselor will take that and say, oh, this student is interested in social life and academics. And so the study abroad flyer might be a good item to send to them. Another one might be interested in student government and social life. And so they sent them about an evening fundraiser with student government and with another handwritten note. Next slide. Excitement is another component. While there's stress, excitement is also, and that was another study I did with Bob. How do you build excitement and a feeling of excitement through the process that is so daunting and transactional? And so we tried, here's an example of our moot court team winning and building excitement that way. And so you could see what that looked like, and a note from Gabby to that student. We've got an emotional intelligence university writing center. It does two things. A, we have a writing center to support your concerns about writing, and it's in the community. We also have our tutors in the community helping community members in the underserved areas improve their writing. And so it serves two purposes. One, community engagement, doing good in the world, as well as knowing there's support for any academic skills you might be lacking. And then, in fact, the last item is what the wellness team hands out to entering freshmen during the semester, and talks about journaling as a way to reduce stress. And so this counselor knew the student was interested in these areas, had some concerns about how much writing and what support systems there were for non-academic life. And so she just put in, again, handwritten note, how to do journaling. So this student is prepared and now knows she has affinity. She knows when she steps on campus, this is available, and she's going to participate in this activity. And I think I will end there because you can see from what I just described, the full flow from the beginning, from the top of the funnel, behavioral intelligence and emotional intelligence, knowing what the trigger points are based on research and conversations with students, and then a personal response. And I will leave, and that we hope, again, higher conversions throughout each step of the funnel.
And at the end here, because we're getting close to our time, I think one of the things that really comes together is you'll see that Joel and his team at Duquesne have really taken the advantage of the marketing automation that is offered through Capture, being able to build those messages based upon Bob's research with those students to find out where that anxiety is, where that stress is, and to alleviate that. One of the last questions that had come up was, what was the best technique to deliver potentially stressful information without overwhelming a prospective student? I think really it goes back to making sure that you're prepared to deliver that in different ways. Thanks for the question, Matthew. I think it's being able to deliver that information where the student is and how the student is typically interacting with you. So whether that's through your admissions counselor staff or whether that's working out with some of your other automated communication. So it just really depends on that. So this is the end for us, gentlemen. Bob, Joel, thank you so very much. Great information. Here's some contact information for us. But if you guys want to reach out to us, we can talk more about this. But again, gentlemen, thank you so very much. Joel, safe travels. And Bob, say hi to Kansas City for us. And don't eat too much barbecue this weekend. I'm jealous of you and where you're located. So we will turn it back over to CEO Napolitano should be joining us. Len, how are you, my friend?
Great. What I loved about that session, and ties in so nicely with what we're going to talk about with Jeff Salingo, was this multifaceted approach. And now in this multifaceted approach, only 21% of the students said, hey, someone engaged with me. Imagine, as he said, if we move that to 80%, and that's something that any institution can do.
Yep.
And then how they then layered it and thinking about, what, it's not more students, it's the one that we engage. Let's make each of those engagements meaningful and relevant, and let's convert. I just thought it was just such a nice way of just showing, what's important to our students and then being relevant, for each of them.
No, I think it's important that we meet the student where they are.
Yeah.
Len, you preach that to us all the time. Find out where the student is, meet them there, and help them get to the right fit for them. So, Len, thanks for the opportunity. Have a great talk with Jeff. Jeff, good to see you. Everybody, take care.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I'm excited to introduce Jeff Salingo. It is my pleasure to introduce the New York Times bestselling author of 3 books on education and the job market. For nearly 25 years, his in-depth reporting and powerful storytelling has provided practical insight into the future of higher education and the workforce for university leaders, corporate executives, as well as students and parents. He writes regularly for the Washington Post, The Atlantic, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. Jeff is a professor and special advisor for innovation at the Arizona State University. He also writes, he appreciates that humor. He also writes a bi-weekly newsletter on all things higher ed called Nest and co-hosts the podcast Future You. His latest book, Who Gets In and Why? A Year Inside College Admissions, was published in September of 2020 and named among the 100 notable books of the year by the New York Times. And today, we are delighted that Jeff has joined us for a conversation about his findings and experiences as it relates to the world of admissions. Welcome, Jeff Salingo.
Well, you should call me the Jeff Salingo.
The Jeff Salingo. I just had an article in there.
With a little TM after it.
Who doesn't love a good article? I love a good article, right? It means it's fancy and good. So I want to get into the book. Actually, for anyone who has not, please, I recommend this read.
I'm sorry. This way. Yep.
But what's awesome about this book, what I have in front of me, for those of you who are interested, I've broken down the book in my assessment in two ways. Jeff provides a wonderful statistics for us as educational leaders to reference, but then just really rich some quantitative and qualitative analysis of a variety of institutions. But Jeff, I have to ask, not everyone has had the opportunity yet to read this publication. Why did you want to do this? And go in this immersive fashion? And, what were some of the key questions that you were hoping to answer? And were the key questions you did answer the ones you started off trying to answer?
Great question. So I decided to do this book a couple of years ago. I reread Fast Food Nation, which many people might have read on this thing, right? So Fast Food Nation was fascinating to me because it took you inside an industry by looking at the various players in it, right? The history of Carl's Jr. It took you inside a meatpacking plant, on a potato farm, right? And it took you a deep dive into each portion of that industry. And as I was reading that book, I thought in many ways higher education, but particularly admissions, was ripe to be told in the same way. Because that same summer, I reread Jack Steinberg's book, The Gatekeepers, which I think for many admissions professionals is kind of the book around, an inside look at college admissions. But that was almost 20 years old at the time. It was around 2000. And as we all know, admissions has changed drastically. So that was really the impetus for the book, is to look at the admissions industry as a whole, but also not just go inside one institution. I ended up, as you know, and many people who read the book know, I ended up inside 3 admissions offices at Emory, at Davidson, and at the University of Washington. But I also wanted to look at all the various players in the admissions ecosystem. So I also looked obviously at students and followed students, seniors who were applying everywhere. But one thing that Jack didn't do, because I don't think it was as big as it is today, but when you go into that hall at NACAC and you see all the players, including Capture, higher ed, which is in the book, of course, all the players that are pulling levers in the background that students and parents particularly don't really know exist. And what are they doing? Because the goal of this book, and I'm not sure that the college folks today would appreciate this necessarily, is that I wanted to make students and parents better consumers. This is going to be one of the biggest price tag items that they're going to buy in their life after a home and a car, most likely. And I just think that parents and students are not great consumers of higher ed. So that's the question that I went into, is how can we kind of pull back the curtain to make them better consumers? And one of the things that I guess didn't surprise me, but surprised me to the level that it was that I saw, was about how college admissions, because I'd worked for the Chronicle, I'd covered higher education for more than 25 years. So I kind of knew this, but maybe not to the level, and I guess I didn't really explain it to people out there as much as I could have over those 25 years, is how much college admissions is really around kind of the institutional priorities and not around the applicant. And again, I think that once parents and students understand that, because I think most people, I'm a Gen Xer, I think most Gen Xers now who have kids going to college or about to go into the college search, they really have an emotional tie to their institution. But we all know that admissions is much different today than it was in the 80s and early 90s. And I think that that emotional tie has to now be supplemented by a much harder look at the financial returns on higher education and really approaching this as a consumer.
I think also something else that you mentioned a little bit later in the book, that you said admissions is also based on the potential of the student and not just what they accomplished, prior to entering that institution. I thought that was really an important concept that some people forget.
Yeah, we're really looking ahead. This is 18 years, right? And most institutions, I think, are looking for a mindset in a student. Are they going to come to campus, and are they just going to basically be a spectator to their education? Are they just, going to kind of go to classes, participate maybe in some activities, but not really stretch themselves in the ways that I think college is really meant to be? College is really meant for you to kind of interrogate your beliefs and your ideas and what you want to do when you get there at the age of 18. It's really the only time in life that you have the freedom to do that at a point when you're really maturing. And what's interesting to me about admissions, though, is much of the assets that a student is sending to an institution within an application is not about potential. It's about the past. It's all about what I did in high school, what I've done in high school. And in some ways, it's baked well before high school. The thing that really kind of maybe surprised me a little bit in sitting in those admissions offices for that year was just how much the high school transcript counts toward eventual admission. And just think about the transcript. Think about, 4 years, or at that point, maybe 3+ years of grades, the courses you took. The courses you took freshman and sophomore year, as we all well know, are baked well before freshman year. It's a lot of it's what you take in 8th grade or 7th grade to set up for that freshman and sophomore year. So here we are judging these students on the past when a lot of this is, what are they going to bring to our campuses?
I think before I get into some of the questions as relates to how does it relate to admissions professionals and things, maybe some insight you can give to our audience. As you know, the majority of our audience today are marketing and enrollment leaders. But you break in the book, you discuss there are sellers and buyer institution types. And I think that's a really important concept for our audience to understand, as most schools in our nation will fall into
our buyers.
Into the buyer category. And so can you just kind of explain that concept to our audience?
Right. So all of us here understand the idea of enrollment management and tuition discounting and kind of how we build a class. But for most people on the other side of the desk, students and parents, they don't quite get this. And again, remember, Gen Xers, a lot of those students came of age when, a lot of financial aid was based solely on financial need. Although obviously even in the 80s, it was enrollment management and tuition discounting and leveraging was even increasing then. And I really wanted to explain to parents and students that this is not just about academic fit and social fit. We so often talk about fit in college, but it's also about financial fit. And financial fit doesn't come in at the end when you get that financial aid offer, but it really comes into where you're applying to. And one of the things that I saw in reporting the book is so often I would see students who were, shooting for the moon in terms of where to apply, and they would possibly get in, not all the time, but they would possibly get in, but they would get in and then they wouldn't get necessarily the financial aid they were expecting because maybe they were just above the financial aid cutoff for some of these institutions. Again, more selective institutions. And I wanted to try to explain to them, well, those were mostly what I call seller institutions, very small group of them, meaning that they have something to sell. They have this brand name. They have more applicants than they know what to do with. Kind of they're selling access to this kind of walled garden in higher education. But the vast majority of institutions, when it comes to admissions, are buyers. In other words, that they do have to discount tuition in a way to get students in the door. And I wanted to explain it in this way and have this bifurcation between buyers and sellers. Now, again, some people might be offended by those terms. It was not meant to talk anything about the type of education. In fact, as I point out several times in the book, you can actually get a really good education at buyers. In fact, the majority of institutions are buyers. Many of them are really good schools. And in some cases, I would even argue some better than seller schools. But I wanted for parents and students to really understand this world between buyers and sellers, especially when it came to the admissions process.
I mean, I think one of your examples you use is the young lady out in California, where I believe she was accepted into one of the Ivies, but then eventually decides to go to, I believe it was UCLA or UC Berkeley.
Yeah, she ended up going to UCLA because she was an in-state student. Yeah. She was accepted at Wellesley,
yes.
But because middle income, I think her father was a firefighter, mother a teacher, just kind of was a little bit above the income cutoffs for a lot of the financial aid at Wellesley, and she just didn't get a lot as a result. Now, if she had applied to more buyer schools, which she didn't, she probably would have gotten a decent amount of merit aid at some of these schools, but she didn't do that. She ended up at UCLA, which of course is not an issue at all, I think, but she clearly wanted to go to a private college on the East Coast, and it didn't work out for her.
The theme of our conference, as I shared with you, is Find Your Balance. And in your book's introduction, you acknowledge the following. What I hope to do in this book is show that college admissions is a business. It is a big one that you have very little control over. Can you share what you determined to be the main cause of stress amongst higher ed recruitment and marketing professionals now that you've had the opportunity to be ingrained with them, for almost a year? And how do you see the future of this profession? And what changes do you foresee?
At the end of the day, there's just too much friction in the system. And the system is really driven by these more selective institutions, which, as we know, even over the last 2 years, have been inundated with more and more applications. And so we really have a two-tiered system in admissions where we have the largest publics and privates, the more selective publics and privates kind of driving the system, meaning they're the ones who say to the Common App, we want all of these assets, right? We want these grades with transcripts and recommendations and multiple essays and things like that. When for most institutions to make an admissions decision, they don't really need that much. Most institutions don't. And so where I think that the cause of stress to me is not only, finding potential students to fill the top of your funnel, but really reducing the friction that they have in learning whether they could get in and how much it's going to cost. And because so much of our narrative around college is, oh, it's so hard to get in, when we know it isn't, right? The average acceptance rate of American colleges and universities is something like 62%. But we know that the media, and I'll take a little blame for this, is really driven by the narrative of these selective schools where it is hard to get in. And so most parents and students believe it is hard to get in. And what you pay for college is kind of a black box. So if we could reduce the friction on those two things very early on, and this is why I'm really excited about all the experiments going on now around this idea of direct admissions, so that we just reduce that friction so that when we find a student we want, we bring them into our fold immediately. We get what we need out of them in terms of the data to determine whether they're going to succeed here. But I will again argue that we ask for way too much to determine that. Get them into the fold, get them accepted, get them their financial aid offer, and then they're assured they have a spot somewhere. And that really changes their perspective on higher education and that institution in particular. The faster you could do that, the easier you could do that and reduce that friction for students and parents early on so that they're assured that they have a spot somewhere and it's not going to cost them an arm and a leg, then I think, to me, that would reduce the stress on both the students, but more important on the institutions.
Speaking about friction, you talk about playing the odds, and, admissions is a mix of art and science. And we hear about this and the role the scoring plays. Emory used 4 variables, right? U of Washington uses 3 variables. And so as an outsider, what is your view or impression of the balance between the arts and the science? We just talked about friction. And do you see the scale as our society is changing and how students and parents are viewing, the value of an education? Do you view it tipping one way or the other? And if so, which way? Because I'm sure some of our enrollment professionals are like, hey, maybe we need to be ahead of this.
Oh, it's a very good question. I actually think that I'm not quite sure it's tipping one way or the other. It's a nice mix. But from leadership, I think it's much more tipping towards the science. I think, the stuff that you're talking about with analytics, just the deeper amount of data now that we have on students and their engagement and that we know about students, the deeper amount of data that we know about students who come from certain high schools and how they perform at our institution, so that we could then go out and get more of those types of students, right? So that's the science part of it. The art part of it, though, is when we do have way too many applicants that look similarly, it is a lot of judgment at that point, judgment on the part of the admissions office. So I think at the less selective institutions, I think science is really taking over. I see data playing a much bigger role in helping institutions fulfill their institutional needs for admissions going forward. At the more selective institutions, I still see it as a mix of science and art, because I think the art comes in when we're talking about we have way many more applicants than we have seats for these students.
At one point, you talk about the selling of the institution. and the importance of selling the institution and the transformation an enrollment counselor begins to make. What recommendation do you have for enrollment professionals to balance talking about the mission, but the necessity of salesmanship? And they're equally important roles, but for many of the buyer institutions, they are tuition dependent institutions, the majority of them. There are some that can rely on their endowment. So what advice would you give to that counselor, to the associate director of admissions?
I think that we have to start to embrace this role, that we are in a sales role. And what I fear on college campuses, as you know, if I walked onto a college campus and spoke to faculty and used the word business, use the word customer, use the word student experience, if I used any of those words, people would walk out, they would throw things at me, right? And so I think that impacts then everybody else on on campus, in that we speak in whispers, right? So I did a dinner with some VPs for enrollment a couple of weeks ago in New York, and it felt like they were freed to talk the way they really wanted to talk, because on campus they have to talk about some of this stuff in whispers because they're afraid of how the reaction to the faculty. I think, and we know this in the business world, in every other sector, you could be mission driven, but also a business. I mean, every business out there, even for-profit businesses, have missions. So there's nothing that is in opposition to each other to be a mission-driven institution that also has a bottom line, because that's what it is at the end of the day. And in admissions, you are that bottom line, right? That you have to deliver, because most of these institutions are tuition-driven. You have to deliver those students. And so one of the things I wish that admissions professionals would do is embrace that role even more, that we want to be customer centric, that we want to provide the amount of data that will help students make decisions about whether to come here, right? And not run away from it. I feel like we're running away from it so often because we're afraid of what the faculty will think. Well, to be honest with you, if it weren't for you, faculty wouldn't have a job because they wouldn't have any students sitting in their classroom.
Before I get to some of the questions in the comments, I do have another question. There is a student in the book, Chris. Chris is in rural Pennsylvania. But there's a stat that you provide us in the book a little early, midway through. 18% of the high schools provide 75% of the applicants, of which it becomes 79% of the admitted students.
Yeah.
Chris comes from a forgotten, potentially, high school. Maybe I'm describing it correctly, a rural high school in Pennsylvania. Do you believe, since the pandemic, that there's going to be less Chris's that are forgotten about because of enrollment technologies, that these students are going to become more discoverable? Or do you believe actually it's going to go the other way? The enrollment technologies are going to only make this 18% of the high school students that much more accelerated and, bigger?
I actually think it might go the other way, where Chris's might be forgotten, because you want to know how Chris was discovered? His SAT score. And if it weren't for his SAT score, none of these colleges would care about him. And now, obviously, in a test optional world, Chris can still take the test, but he goes to a high school where the college counselor, not even a college counselor, it's truly a guidance counselor, who is overwhelmed. Most of the students don't go to college. So what's Chris's message? Testing is not required. He's not probably ever going to talk to his counselor about it, and thus won't take the test and won't be discovered as a result, because as Chris told me and other people at that school told me, he was more likely to have a military recruiter show up at his high school than a college recruiter. So no, I don't think the Chris's of the world are going to be found without some sort of national standard to find them, because Chris's school had only a couple of APs, again, small, rural, didn't send a lot of kids to college. Unless we have the technologies to find students like that, who are those true diamonds in the rough, I fear that in a test optional world, again, not that students are not going to take the test, but the Chris's of the world, I think, are more likely not to take the test because they're not going to get the message that it could potentially help them.
Selfishly, for Capture, as we try to engage with anonymous, students, that's only based upon their access to channels, right? Media channels, web channels, whatever that channel is. In your research, did you find that the Chris's sometimes also lack the access to the channels where, the schools that are able to identify those anonymous students because they're on the web, they're on TikTok, they're on Facebook, right? Those channels, that also these students are also on less of those channels.
Yeah, they're definitely on fewer of those channels because, as you remember, Chris, compared to the other two students who were in the book, end up profiling 3 students, followed many more, but profiled 3 of them, is that he started the search much later, much less engaged in it, was really focused on maybe playing football because it was really his football coach that encouraged him to go to college. But the football coach didn't really do much else beyond, say, go to college, right? Was really influenced by older friends and where they went, if they went at all. So it was really kind of hit and miss. It was not a sustained effort, and it was an effort that started really late in the process. And so I fear that without the right messages, and Chris was helped greatly by, he was at a school with a college advising corps member. So college advising corps placing these recent college graduates in high schools to work as near peers and alongside the existing counselor. He was really helped by that person, that woman who graduated from F&M like 2 years earlier. And by the way, grew up in a very similar environment to Chris in rural Pennsylvania. One of the reasons why she wanted to go into the college advising corps. But that is, again, a very few number of high schools across the US. So it's something I do really worry about because these students exist. They exist everywhere. 25,000 high schools. The fact that an Emory, for example, might only be getting applications from 5,000 or 6,000 high schools out of 25,000 tell you that there's a lot more students out there. The question is, how do we find them? How do we connect with them?
Before I provide you some questions from the field, I got to know, in the book, I think it ends with Chris's first semester. So we don't know if Chris persists at Gettysburg. For those of you who don't know, I'm a Civil War buff. So does he persist at Gettysburg?
No, he unfortunately doesn't. He has ended up transferring out of Gettysburg to a community college. A liberal arts college probably wasn't the right fit for him, or he didn't really understand what a liberal arts college really was. If you remember, he wanted to major in computer science, and wasn't really prepared for kind of the core curriculum that is kind of served up at a liberal arts college in the beginning. He also really wasn't prepared for the level of work at Gettysburg, particularly when it came to computer science. So he ended up transferring. It was also obviously impacted. All of these students were impacted by the pandemic, but he unfortunately did not. I guess depending on, he's doing very well now. I haven't caught up with him in about 8 months or so, but the last time I caught up with him, he was doing very well, but didn't persist there at that 4-year college.
Thank you for sharing. I want to read a question from the field. Where do you believe schools should draw the line when recognizing that their school may not be the fit for a prospective student, but the student is still interested in attending?
It's a great question, right? Because you're trying to balance the fact that that they're not a great fit, but that the student is still interested. My feeling is that you have to be upfront to these students in the admissions process. Whether that is there's too much of a gap, for example, in their financial aid package, and they're just going to struggle financially to stay there. They're just not a good social fit or academic fit. These are the students that a year or two later are going to be the most likely to not persist, right? To leave. And that's going to then impact your retention rate and eventually your graduation rate. So I get the fact that you need to make a class and that the student is really interested, but I think it really is incumbent on the institution to try. I know you may not always succeed in telling students that this may not be the best place for them, but I think it is incumbent on the institutions to try, because even from an institutional perspective, it will eventually, I believe, impact your retention and graduation rates.
You also received another question. How do you see the concept of customer service being incorporated into enrollment management moving forward? In other words, can higher education truly ingrain quality customer service into the mix?
I believe it can if the proper investments are made. I mean, this digital transformation that has happened in every other sector of the economy that has allowed for much more customized and frequent interactions with students, or in this case, in the other sectors of the economy, with customers, right? Every major retailer and other companies, from Amazon to Netflix, Apple, right? They're sending me notifications on my watch. They're constantly engaging with me, which then makes me a more dedicated customer. We know this technology exists. I think higher ed is just 5 or 10 years behind on it. And we're increasingly seeing this, right, with chatbots and other things to allow these more frequent and customized interactions. The problem is twofold. It requires higher digital IQ than I think many admissions offices and many institutions are prepared for. And I think it's even worse during the pandemic, where we see talent both in the admissions office and in the IT departments leaving. And it requires sustained investments that I think many institutions, without the margins that they need to make those investments, are not making right now. So that's where I worry that whether higher education can truly ingrain customer service into the mix. The service exists out there. It exists in other sectors of the economy. I think the problem is bringing it into higher ed.
2 more questions. They'll be brief, as I know we're coming up on time. As you see the role of technology services, technology and services being incorporated into enrollment management, into admissions, what is the appropriate mix? As you see just this hardship that schools are facing, all the things that they're trying to balance by engaging with prospective students, by having these technologies, whether it's technologies like Capture, we heard from Campus ESP, Campus Reels, there's just a lot of different technologies. Any guidance that you can give on for institutional leaders on creating a better balance based upon what you were able to observe?
A better balance in terms of what they
use in their portfolio, right? To execute their institutional priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is really understanding where that return on investment is, right? We have invested in a lot of technology and a lot of efforts on college campuses over the years that, to be perfectly blunt, have not paid off, but we continue to do it and use them, right? And I think it's kind of a continual look at what's possible. I also think that we're trying to bite off way too much in the beginning on so many things, right? I understand. I sit on a board of trustees myself. I actually chair the Enrollment and Marketing Committee, and there is a lot of pressure from institutional leadership, meaning the board in particularly, to kind of fix these things. And I think that we're all impatient. We all want it to happen tomorrow. And so I think that really thinking about admissions as, okay, we're going to do this year. We're going to buy these products this year, see what impact that has, see what return that has, then look at the next year. And I understand everyone's under pressure, especially with the enrollment declines coming and things like that. But if we try to do it all at once, I think we're going to misspend in many ways. And we're really not going to know what pays off because we're not going to be really able to understand the data.
And lastly, you bring something up. So at the end of your book, you acknowledge your gratitude to your fellow board members and your alma mater, Ithaca College. How has this book changed you as a board member?
A great question. I really try to bring the perspective, not only of my expertise in higher ed, which is why I was asked to be on the board, but increasingly the perspective of the consumer and of the student, right? Most board members come to it because they've had children who went through the college search process, or in some cases grandchildren, right? So they have that perspective. But what I do is I try to widen their lens on trying to understand what the average consumer now is facing when they think about the college search. So that's hopefully the value that I'm bringing to the board.
Jeff, I know we've come on our time. We've gone a little over. On behalf of the entire Capture community, I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
It was great to be here. Thank you so much. We could have gone on for another hour.
We could. To everyone out there, please, I recommend this phenomenal read. And thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you.
And there are my MCs. How awesome is Jeff?
So good. Full confession. Now that Jeff's in the backstage part, I'm a massive fangirl. I've read everything he's ever written. I can't. I was so excited to see him. I just wish we had this one in person.
So what I'll do, I'll ask him to sign page 42 where Capture is mentioned. And maybe that will be a little gift from capture to capture.
Oh my gosh. Be cool, Mueller. Be cool.
I mean, some people want Harry Styles autograph. You're going to get a Jeff Salingo autograph.
There have been a couple times in my career where I got real close to people that I 100% obsess over. So this was exciting.
Okay. Well,
oh my gosh. Well done, Len. That was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Carla. We're here. You guys, I just.
Oh, I'm muted. Look at that.
There she is.
Gosh,
I have had such a great time. Yes. I'm a little sad.
I'm a little sad. Like a few of my friends who happen to be in a band called Boys to Men would say, you're at the end of the road. And it's the saddest place to be. But what a great couple days. Truly thank you to everybody who participated, presenters and behind the scenes, and our audience who gave great comments, asked amazing questions, and really kept the conversation going. It's truly the recipe for an amazing virtual conference.
Absolutely. And I want to give a quick shout out to our marketing team, who has had countless hours and days and weekends prepping for this incredible experience and producing the entire thing over the last 2 days. Well done. We have the top of the top for our marketing folks. And behind the scenes, thank you to everyone on the Capture team for the great work that you do with our partners every day. Without that, we wouldn't be able to have these kinds of conferences. So we're pumped. Today has been action-packed, information-filled, everything from starting with Dr. Naringer to Rajiv and Gil and Brooke and Carlos and David and Rob, helping us better understand how to assess that tech stack in recruitment marketing, to Chris and Joel and Bob, helping us see how to put together behavioral intelligence with emotional intelligence to really make an impact for that particular student. And then my guy, Jeff Salingo, bringing it on home for us at the end of the day.
It's been great. And I hope that you guys got as much out of it as we did. I think you did.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things, Carla, I know, right, that you are so passionate about is assessment and measurement. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to ask?
Absolutely. You guys, feedback at Capture and in general, internally and with our partners is critical to make us better. And so we want you to know what you thought about Innovate 2022. So please, if you don't mind, take a couple minutes to fill out our post-conference survey. Seriously, it's so short. It's only going to take you like literally 2 minutes. And we would be so grateful to figure out how we can pack a bigger punch next year, which hard to imagine, but I'm sure we can. So please, this link in the chat will take you to the survey, or you can scan the code to get the survey as well.
Absolutely. You know, we've had lots of questions about how you can access recordings from the last 2 days. And our marketing team is going to be sending out communications to all of the participants who registered. And in that email will be links to recordings. So you can watch Innovate 2022 over and over and over again and share it with all your friends who maybe didn't have a chance to be able to join us over the last 2 days live. We're coming to the exciting part.
We have kept you all long enough waiting at the edge of your seat to announce the winner of a brand new Peloton bike. And please know that a member of our team will be in touch with you with more details on how you're going to receive that bike, and mine and Heather's information on how we can come and take a little joyride. We asked for just one, but we want to announce the winner, and that's Mary Venezia, Chief of Staff Enrollment Management at the University of Arizona. Thank you so much for everyone that shared and liked and followed and all the stuff. Mary prevailed, but we'll do something really cool next year too.
Congratulations, Mary. That is so exciting. Woo! There she is. I see her in chat. Yes way, Mary. Yes way.
Yes,
it's yours.
Yes,
Peloton's coming your way, as are Carla and I.
See you soon.
Carla, thank you so much for being the most amazing co-MC. Without you, I don't know that we could have pulled this thing off. To all of you that have joined us over the last 2 days, thank you for sharing your time with us. I hope that you have taken away some really great information, things that you can put into action tomorrow. Keep in touch. Let's stay connected, and we will definitely see you at Innovate 2023. Have a great afternoon.
And if you don't use Capture, give us a call or we'll call you. Have a great day, everyone.